I've embedded a lot of links in the presentation for resources for you to check out later. So please use those links, and they're all inside that PDF. If you can't see it, let me know. Also, I put a QR code up there if you need to scan it. You could do that also. Let's get started if we can. Aloha, good morning. I hope it's not raining yet. I haven't been outside yet in a while, but I hear it's coming. My name is Rob Hack. My company is Insight Inter-Asia. I'm on the board of the nonprofit Hawaii Pacific Export Council, or HPEC, and we're putting on this seminar today, Marketing in Japan. We do that seminar and the seminar series, I'll go through that later in the presentation, but we do that with a generous grant from DBET, who in turn has a grant from the Small Business Administration in Washington. So we'd like to thank DBET very much for that grant and the ability to put this on. We'd also like to thank the Foreign Trade Zone for this fabulous facility where we put on our seminars here, so thanks to them very much. There's coffee, drinks, all of that in the back. The way we're going to do things generally today is go through step by step some marketing things, and we'll open up the conversation to our panel, and then come back and talk about the next topics in marketing in Japan, and then we'll come back to the panel. So first off, let me introduce Jamie Lum from DBET. She has a few words about High Step. You can use the microphone right there.
Aloha, good morning everyone. As Rob stated, I'm Jamie Lum and I'm with the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism. And we're fortunate to be the recipients of, on behalf of the state of Hawaii, of a grant from the Small Business Administration for exporting. It's called the State Trade Expansion Program. In Hawaii, we call it our High Step. And the intent of the grant is to get more companies across the US, but in particular in Hawaii, more of our companies to export, or for those that are exporting, to increase the amount of exports that you're doing. So we're just happy to have all of you here this morning. Our export readiness training, of which this is session is a part of, is one component of our High Step program, together with HPEC, with the Small Business Development Center, and Joe and Lori are here, with Innovate Hawaii and with the Mink Center. We help companies through either these training sessions, or I'm not sure, through these training sessions and through business advising sessions. Each of our partners help companies looking at some of the issues that you might be facing in order to be able to export, and with their expertise and their background, they're able to help our companies navigate through various types of issues that they have. So that's one component. Another component is our Hawaii pavilions, where we, DBED, organize groups of companies to go into
I'm sorry, I can't control that.
to go into specific trade shows. Many of you may have gotten our recent email for the Tokyo International Gift Show, which is in September. That's probably the largest show that we organize. So if you go onto our website, which is invest.hawaii.gov, invest.hawaii.gov, under the exporting tab, you'll find all of the information about our High Step program. You'll see all the dates for the upcoming seminars, the trade shows and the dates. And then our final component is our company assistance program, which we've actually already given out the awards for 2018. So if we do get another grant, which we won't know till towards late summer, early fall, we would have another round of funding available, probably not until the end of the year. And that would be for 2019. But basically, these funds are just to help incentivize companies to help them further along their export plan. And that's kind of the main key, is you have to have an export plan. And again, with the business advising that our partners help companies with, that is something that they can help you with in putting that together. So that's just a quick rundown of our High Step program. Again, invest.hawaii.gov gives you more information on the program. Thank you very much for being here, and aloha.
Thank you, Jamie. Can you do me a favor and call Jan not to Thank you. Let's very quickly go through our esteemed panelists, all who have very much real-world experience marketing in Japan. First is Sal Miwa in the center here. He's the chair of the Japan-America Society of Hawaii, otherwise known as JASH. He's also the CEO of Myland Realty, which I think is a clever name, like Island, Myland. Very nice. They do a lot of sales work of real estate in Japan. Phil Ricard, owner of Philip Ricard Jewelry. Eric Takahata, he's managing director of Hawaii Tourism Japan. That'll be a very interesting perspective. Jorma Winkler, he's owner of Winkler Woods, Imua Ukulele, and lots of other wood product companies, right? We'll talk about that later. Again, I'm Rob Hack from HPEC, and my company is Insight Inter-Asia. I remind you, I realize that blue font on these types of presentations is not highly attractive, but I left the blue font on there to remind you that these are links that you can use in that document. So later it'll take you to the website of their companies or their bios or what have you. So very quickly, let's talk about what is marketing. And I have to preface this by saying this is all I've ever done in my career is sales and marketing in Asia, with some emphasis on Japan, but this is all I know how to do. I was trained as a petroleum engineer. I never touched a drop of oil in my life that didn't go in my car. I immediately was hired by a Japanese company after I got out of school to do sales and marketing for them around Asia, selling Japanese products and what have you. I got to then spend a great deal of my career in Japan just selling things, all kinds of things over the years, and that goes back now to 1990. So I would just tell you that's all I've ever done, and I learned very early to stick with these 4 Ps. And we're going to go through this a lot today. You're going to hear these 4 Ps, but if you take any marketing class, you should hear about the 4 Ps. What are they? Product, price, place, and promotion. All right, so we're going to talk about that a lot. I also have 2 quotes that I like from Peter Drucker, was a very famous IBM guy and a professor. He said, a company has 2 functions only. It makes things and then it sells things, but neither one of those is more important than the other. All other functions of the company support either manufacturing or sales, right? So let's make sure we understand sales and marketing. Then there's another quote I like, and this is just me. In all aspects of the business, make it as easy as possible for your customers to buy from you. If you're marketing in Japan, you make it as easy as possible for your Japanese customers to buy from you. And yes, that involves Japanese language. We'll get to that eventually. What I'd like to talk about today, and I've asked the panelists to think about this, is that there's 2 types of customers we need to think about. There's customers that are in Japan. You're going to ship product to them in Japan. You're going to market your product to them in Japan. They're going to buy it in Japanese yen, and the transaction is going to be pretty much 100% Japanese, maybe a little bit of English. Then the point of sale in Hawaii, that's different. It's a different marketing strategy than the people who are buying your product in Japan. If you're after tourists or you're after Japanese people that live here, it's a different marketing strategy, and you need to understand that from the beginning. Of course, if they're here, it's a US dollar transaction, right? You can't charge somebody yen on Waikiki. It doesn't work. Maybe on their credit card it'll show up in yen, but your price is going to be US dollars. Probably a mixed language transaction, but if you could do it in Japanese, you're going to get more sales. Okay, the first P, the product. Let me jump right in. It's no secret, I think if you live in Hawaii, you've heard of omiyage. It's no secret that Japanese people take back to Japan omiyage. And this isn't cheap junk. It's good stuff they have to take back, particularly to their mother-in-law or their boss, people who have a lot of influence over their life. They take back good omiyage. And so you need to understand that they're not going to take back a simple little $1 thing from ABC. They want to take back something nice, something unique. And I say souvenir is not a good translation, right? If you ask a Japanese person, what is the translation of omiyage, that 99 out of 100 will tell you souvenir, but that's not right. In my mind, souvenir is kind of like a trinket, but that's not what we're after here. We're after something unique, something relatively pricey, and then levels of price, I think, is good. As I say, it must be something local, unique, and not cheap. And by cheap, I mean inexpensive, but I also mean kind of cheap as in not good quality. I like this phrase in Japanese called omiyage banashi, and that's sort of the story that people will tell about their trip they just took. And if your gifts can fit into their omiyage banashi, you're gonna sell a lot of those goods. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. The other thing I get very irritated consulting to companies here is that they don't understand that the Japanese customer likes nice bags. We'll spend a lot of time later on packaging, but the bags are very important. So for example, this doesn't cut it if you're selling this down in Waikiki or somewhere you're selling a product to somebody. They need a very nice bag to put it in, because it's very rude. Like in Japan, let's say for example, I'm going to give this book to Shira over here. I can't just hand her this book and say, hey, happy birthday. It has to be wrapped, and it has to be in a bag, a nice little bag. So the average Japanese house has so many of these little bags stored. You know what I'm talking about? There's a section of the house that has like hundreds of bags that you could never ever go through in a lifetime. But they take them because they realize they're going to get things and they need to give it to somebody else, but they can't just hand it to them, so they have to put it in a bag, right? It's fascinating to me. But I think it's nice. It's a very nice touch. But you as sellers, producers of products, you need to adapt to that and have decent bags for them so that they will just buy it. It makes it so much easier for them to buy from you. The decision is there. They don't have to find another bag to put it in before they take it back to Japan. Simple thing. Let's just talk for a minute about packaging. Again, these are things I know are not a secret, but I really want to bang it into our company's heads that packaging is extremely important. Now, I put a link down here to the Japan Packaging Institute with some data. If you look at how much packaging materials are consumed by the 120 million people in Japan, it will curl your hair, assuming you have any to curl. They go per capita. They go through so much packaging materials. That's wrapping, it's paper, it's ribbons, it's the bags we just talked about, it's foam, it's bubbles, it's the whole 9 yards. So again, I put an example of this girl with the bags because she's got them. All of those bags are eventually going to wind up in the bag storage in the house, but she'll be able to take those bags and give people gifts in there. And then I put together this really interesting. I found this thing from, I think it was Takashi Maya, one of the department stores, about how to fold a standard package in Japan. Just looking at that gives me a headache, right? But that's the way it is, and you have to adapt to that, or at least be similar or understand what that customer is going to go through before they can take that omiyage back and give it to somebody. They love clean, tight wrapping and sharp corners. I've seen packaging from Hawaii rejected for display in stores in Japan because the wrapping wasn't tight enough and the labels weren't square enough. I mean, perfectly on there. They were sort of askew on the package. The other thing I get irritated with is I see a lot of our companies won't put business cards in those packages. I mean, let them take these business cards back to Japan. You know, that's just, we got to do those things. Very simple. Another quick part of this P is I want you to focus very much on segmenting the market. I meet too many people who say, we want to sell to Japan. Okay, that doesn't mean anything. You're not going to sell, nobody in Hawaii has a type of product that you're going to sell to all 126 million Japanese people. you don't have that product, right? Maybe this is the type of product that could do that, but that's about it, right? It's not made in Hawaii. Your target market segment for your product is a lot less than that. And I've met some companies here that I've consulted to, and I've told them, I think your target market is about 40,000 people in Japan, right? But you have to focus on who exactly are those people, right? Not everybody wants to buy an ukulele in Japan. Wouldn't it be great if everybody had one? 126 million ukuleles, but not everybody wants one, right? So we have to think about it that way. And what I try to tell my clients that focus. Find out, is your audience, your target market, is it mostly female? Is it mostly male? Is it mostly female between what ages, right? What income, what education? That's all the market research that goes into these things. But you've got to start figuring that out because it helps you tune the message to that audience over and over and over. It's rinse and repeat. We try it, we learn, and we adjust. That's what marketing is all about. So let's move on. Very quickly about demographics, which I think is interesting. 126, roughly 127 million people, but it's now decreasing because they're not having any babies in Japan. And the population is very old. That doesn't sound nice, but for a marketing person, it's great because it helps you define a target market very specifically, right? There's 30% of the population is over 65, and that's increasing every day. What else is remarkable for a sort of medium-sized country? There's over 100,000 people that are over 100, right? So this issue, quality of life, is a term you hear in Japan a lot, especially for the silver generation. They use the acronym QOL, and that's for making life for older people easy and happy and wonderful and healthy and what have you. So for marketing people, you look at that and say, wow, as you know, that market, the older people love blueberries, right? If you had anything with blueberries, Hawaii blueberries, you would make a fortune if there was such a thing, right? They love blueberries because it's supposed to be good for your eyes and all of these other things. And probably is to some regard. But the point being that there's a lot of natural, healthy products from Hawaii that we could be targeting specifically at some of these markets, and these are what we need to think about. There's another interesting little data point I found over the years that of all of the people in Hawaii, all the people in Japan, 110% of them are interested in Hawaii, actually. So that's something we have to really play to our advantage, right? I've never met or heard of a Japanese person who had a bad thing to say about Hawaii. And that's a great thing. You can't say that about the US, you can't say that about Korea, you can't say that about anywhere else except for Hawaii. It's a great reputation. So we need to use that. Just very briefly, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I'd just like to point out to you, when you're talking about a country like Tokyo with several very significant population centers, you can make your advertising dollars in Japan go pretty far because the population is concentrated in some cities, right? The Tokyo metro area has 27 million people. Think about that, right? That's roughly 22 Hawaiis combined into one metropolitan area. We don't really have that in the US. I think, 60, 70 years ago, New York fit that way, and now LA does, but it's just so spread out. But Tokyo's very condensed. Osaka's 2,600,000 people, and then there's 13 cities over 1 million people. That's pretty remarkable, actually. So for reference, I put Oahu is under 1 million. So think about all of these cities right here. Some of them, you probably never even heard of Yono, right? You know where Yono is? It has more than 1 million people. It has more than Oahu, right? So think about that. Very quickly, there are some things that the average Japanese has in common with the average person in Hawaii. One is they spend a lot of their income, disposable income, on housing, right? We have a lot of commonalities with them. A lot of these numbers here fit very carefully with Hawaii, not necessarily US, but very carefully with Hawaii. So I think from a marketing standpoint, we naturally understand them a little better than some other people might on the mainland. This is just regarding market research and information you might need. As a marketing person, you realize you can never have enough information, and you have to research constantly, but you can't stop doing things. If you want to get into the market, you need to get into the market and do some research, but eventually jump in. A lot of companies keep spinning their wheels working on marketing research, and they never actually jump in and test out the market. And so at some point, you're going to have to do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later with slideshow. When we get to trade shows. So what I'd like to do, even though it appears we have a dead microphone, is open up our panel on the things that I just talked about in terms of the product and getting a product ready for the Japanese market. Thank you. There's two audiences, two potential marketing audiences to think of. One is the customer in Japan. Secondly, the customer that's here, either most likely as a tourist, right? So they had some opportunity to do some research about what they might want to buy or do while they're in Hawaii. But a lot of it is impulse buy too, right? So we need to think about that. So I'd like to open that up to you guys and just say, maybe if you don't mind, we'll just go this way. Jorma, do you have any opinion about that?
Not particularly, but I did want to make a comment about the bags. I was actually at Aulani and I watched a whole transaction. She was speaking Japanese. The lady wasn't. She was trying to figure out how many bags she needed. And because, don't forget, you're going to need one extra bag for everything they buy. And so the Aulani lady was being a little catchy. And she was like, well, I gave you enough bags for that. And if I was her on the other side, I would have just given her 2 or 3 more bags and be done with it and make her really happy. But stuff like that, so I could actually witness the frustration on this Japanese buyers at Aulani of all places too. And so that's the kind of stuff that if you own a shop and are selling to them, just expect them to want a lot of bags.
It raises my blood pressure when I hear those stories. Because again, it goes back to you have to make it easy for these customers to buy from you, right?
Yeah. So anyway, that's just one remark that just happened 2 days ago. Okay, you're working now.
This working now.
Okay.
For my background, I'm in real estate business, so I'm selling Hawaii to Japanese. The product itself is Hawaii, so the quality of our product is real estate here. I do get into a lot of problem with that, but it's a quality of how it's built. There's a few examples, but I don't want to name anything that will stick out. There's some very high-end property here using some certain brand name that Japanese knows, and that building, 85% of them were sold to Japanese just because of the brand. But once the building was built, they went inside and quality was so bad, we get massive complaints. One thing I want you to know though, they don't sue. They don't use lawyers. They hate to use lawyers. But that's probably good for us on the other end. But the quality is very important to Japanese, and they expect it. And you have to start from that. If you want to build something, if you want to make something for Japanese, you have to aim for the best, quality-wise.
I think that's a really good point. Well, I'll talk about this later. That I guess maybe I should save that comment, but what I think is that the Hawaii companies that can have the most success with Japanese consumers are the companies that have sort of a premium product. And it's understood from the beginning of the transaction that you're buying something that's high quality, it's unique, it's natural, it's organic, whatever your angle is. But the interaction with the customer should always be, I'm selling a premium product. I'm not selling something that you could buy at home in Daiso or one of the other one-coin shops, right? This is something that's a unique product or service from Hawaii. And I think the Japanese customers will appreciate that, but you have to keep your message on that and not get bogged down in price.
Sorry, if I could just say something, being representing the state of Hawaii, you say authentic, made in Hawaii instead
Absolutely.
of like Hawaii.
Absolutely.
So I think if you keep saying authentic, and it really is made in Hawaii as much as possible, that's going to convey, yeah. I think
Absolutely.
that's what
Phil, any comment?
I agree with all these things about the packaging and so forth. I think what I want to say is you want to get a real clear picture of who you are as a company and what you're selling. So you want to back up a little bit and you want to figure out, okay, so if I'm going to be a company selling and I want to be in business for a long time, then I think I should have a logo that I can keep for a while. I think I better pick out the colors that I want to use, because 3 years down the road when they see that same packaging, you know, you'll have reaped the benefits of having that same look all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think that the packaging in Japan is just incredible. So you really need to come up with something for your own packaging that is distinctive, and you need to make your product distinctive in some way. And there's a lot of ways to do that. When you go coffee, we say, oh, it's not just Kona coffee, it's Ka'u coffee, or it's such and such coffee, or this, and there's a little story to go with it. And that's really important. So you need to back up before you do your packaging and give your company and your product a little story. As far as packaging goes, I can't tell you where to go to get packaging in the United States. I went to Hong Kong, and they have shows in Hong Kong for packaging, and you can get anything that you want made there, from inexpensive to really high quality as far as packaging goes. And you can just tell them what you want and they will make it. And that's what I suggest, because then you reorder and you've got something that lasts a long time instead of skipping around from different companies, trying to find something that really works. But I think for packaging, know who you are, kind of figure out ahead of time, and figure out how you're going to market that product or your company and the products that you sell for the next so many years, so that you keep that same brand look. That's really important, because it will just build and build all the time. We get our packaging, we could get our packaging from Europe, which has big markets for that, or Hong Kong, but I found out in Hong Kong that you can actually get very good products if you just ask for it. And so we get that, we figured out our logo, our colors, our packaging, and then we stay with that so that they know. You know, when you go to Tiffany, it's got that eggshell blue bag, and that really means something. So you want to figure that out for your own company. The packaging is really important. And some little story about your product, something that makes it unique and special. And then people, especially from Japan, who are great, I mean, I can't say enough about the Japanese people. They are brand conscious. So you want to have a brand. No matter what you're selling, you want to have a brand. They're willing to pay, they're polite, and you just can't find a better customer. So you do a little bit of legwork ahead of time in focusing on what you want your company to look like. Even if you're going to have different products, use the same type of packaging, so it'll get you down the road.
So that's a great plug for our intellectual property and trademarking seminar on April 17th. Very specifically working on trademarks for exporters. So please be here. We have representatives from DCCA and Washington, D.C. coming to, and intellectual property and trademark lawyer will be here to talk to you about how to register your trademarks and what the costs are and all of that stuff. So thank you for bringing that up.
One other thing about the price, I know we're talking about that. When you decide who you're going to be as a company and what you're going to sell, and you make it special, then I think you don't, my personal suggestion is that you don't try and undercut the other people that are selling the same product, because you're a little bit more special and you have a better product. And so while you don't want to be so far ahead of everybody else that it's, you know, you're in this category here, you know, you want to have a price that says, I know we're good, and that's why we're charging this amount of money.
Exactly.
And that'll allow you to have the packaging you want and everything else. So,
Yeah, too many of our companies here are scared to do that, and we really need to dig in our heels and focus our marketing. I mean, you're not going to sell jewelry to 126 million Japanese people.
I'm working on
You're
it.
working on it, I know. But there is a subset of people who you can address your marketing messages to, and it sings to them. That what your marketing, you should get to the point where your marketing message sounds like music to the ears of the people that you are selling to, right? And so, if I get an email from certain companies, I look at it and say, I don't, you know, delete. Something that comes across me, for me, has to do with baseball. No matter what I'm working on, oh, let me see what that's all about. I can't control myself. And that, but everybody has that. You have something that you're most interested in. So when you get an email from Phil saying, hey, we're having a Christmas promotion or this for you get for graduation present, you say, oh yeah, you know, Phil, that's what you want to get to. Okay, Eric, do you have any comments?
From the tourism perspective, I'm kind of like Mr. Miwa here. I sell Hawaii. He sells, you know, land and property here. I sell, you know, Hawaii overall experience, the people, the stakeholders. That's what we sell. So looking at it from our perspective, I can't reiterate enough what Lyle from DBET here mentioned earlier, is that whatever you're doing, your product, your service, and we found this very successful in marketing tourism, marketing Hawaii to the 126 million Japanese, you know, people in Japan, is that we at the core of all of our messaging and our marketing of the state of Hawaii to the Japanese is authenticity and the Hawaiian culture. And we try to stay as true and respectful of that, because we want to market Hawaii as an authentic, you know, destination, of which, you know, the Hawaiian culture is a huge part of it. So what Lyle said earlier, getting back to your product or service, as authentic as you can keep that, I think that is a big key to your success. And a lot of people might overlook that or not realize this, but if you can keep your product as authentic, as Hawaiian authentic as possible, in my opinion, that would be a huge thing that you could do for your business.
Great comments, okay. Please.
Okay, now that I had time to think about what other people are talking about, a couple of points about the quality control. So building ukuleles in Hawaii, this is the 6th year now, and I will tell you a lot of things not to do and how to not sell well in Japan. So a lot of these things they said to do, and it's interesting, we know all these things. You know that this is what you're supposed to do. Now, doing it as a manufacturer is a different story. But for example, the whole price it higher in the beginning, come out with a better product. That's what we attempted to do. So, but unfortunately, the product wasn't as good as, well, we thought it was good enough, but the Japanese told us it wasn't very quickly. So we found ourselves kind of struggling in Japan for the first few years and overcoming a few problems that we didn't think were as big as they thought they were. So, and in all premises, I've been doing business in Japan like 20 years now. So this wasn't like my first little, oh, I know how they are. I've lived there. I still live there. And it's, even then you underestimate it. So, and then because we priced it higher, then they're like, what do you think you're doing? Pricing it higher and you're not as good quality. And it's like, oh, great. So it's been a struggle and a battle, and it's not even our biggest market right now, and it should be, even after all these years. So just, you sometimes get lucky with the sudden, like, we did everything right, and we get a lot of people buying in the first 1, 2, 3 years or whatever, but this is going on at 6 years now. And so still struggling from some problems that happened, you know, 3 or 4 years ago with distributors. So all these different things go into it. But so what's the point is, don't underestimate at all what you think might be these problems, all these little things that add up. And ours were more manufacturing related that, you know, we had to fix and we've overcome, but there'll be things that you won't even think about. So, sorry, I don't know how to answer that.
That's good. We have a question that came in from the neighbor islands. Are there certain colors that you should absolutely avoid in packaging? Someone told me to stop wrapping everything in black tissue. Wow. I guess it depends somewhat on what your product is. If it's very gothic and emo, I suppose black tissue is okay. But I think,
I can make a point.
please.
Our ukuleles are in black. It's always black fir, and because of the koa wood in the black looks very good.
Yeah.
It doesn't take anything away from the wood grain, whereas if you use other colors, it will actually take away from what you're trying to show. So-
My gut reaction is I've never seen a bad color in Japan, but I would tend to use very neutral and lighter colors. But again, it depends on what your product is. If your product is like Jorma was saying, the black really accentuates the product and attracts the eyes to the product, then I would keep it. But maybe you can contact me later and we can talk specifically about your product. All right, let's jump ahead to P2, price. This one tends to get everybody excited. Pricing, we need to go, as a marketing person, we need to get our pricing straight because we set the price for the whole company. Maybe you're a one-person company, so you do everything, but generally it's the marketing people that set the price. So we're worried, we take everything, including the cost of the manufactured goods, but then we have to add in packaging and labeling and shipping and insurance and tariffs and duties, and then if you're selling to Japan, you have a medical product or a lotion or a cream or a shampoo or soap or food, then you will need to get it tested and licensed. So you have to amortize all of those fees into your costs. Then you have commissions for your agents or distributors. That goes into your pricing. And then, of course, warranties, and if you happen to be in a business that needs spare parts or anything like that, you have to figure out where you're going to stock those spare parts, and then the costs of that all get amortized into your product price, right? Then, of course, we'll get to shipping later. But these are all of the factors that need to go into pricing. And I meet a lot of companies daily who don't think about all of these things, actually. And they wind up, their profit is not nearly what they really think it is after a year or two of working in a foreign country or exporting. And I'm not telling you this to dissuade you from exporting or selling in Japan. I'm just telling you that this is the job of marketing people to figure out what are all of these costs and build it into the price of the product. Also, I meet a lot of companies who don't figure out if there are inbound duties into Japan, meaning you have to pay tax to the country when it gets there, right? Could be high, could be zero. We don't know, but you need to know that ahead of time, because if you don't know it and you're not able to pay for it through your shipping system, then your customer is going to receive the package and be asked to pay for that. So that's a shock to the customer. And then what does that mean? You're not making it as easy as possible to buy from you. So make sure we figure these things out. Again, over time, you'll understand all of these costs. And eventually, instead of being variable, they become fixed costs, and they're just baked into the price of your product. The one thing that you have to keep an eye on is the foreign exchange rate. I'm sure you're also keeping an eye on gold and all these other prices, but the foreign exchange rate is very important when you're dealing with another country, particularly a country like Japan, where there's a lot of trade back and forth. A lot of geopolitical influences can affect the yen versus the dollar, and it makes your products more expensive or cheaper. It just depends on how the yen and the dollar are moving, right? And so if you're going to be a marketing person and you're going to market your products to Japanese consumers, you have to keep an eye on the yen and the dollar. That's just all there is to it, and build it into your day that in the morning you're going to check, because the price has already been set for the day by the time you wake up. It was set in New York, and it'll get reset again in London, and it'll get reset again in Tokyo throughout the day. But when you wake up here, it's already done for the day. So figure it out. And I'm not saying you're in the business where you have to know exactly what the rate is at that second, but you need to know the trends and you need to know what's going on, because I think it will affect your price over the short and the longer term. Compared to when I started my career, you have small companies have PayPal and similar services, right? We didn't have that a long time ago. So if you can actually charge people and run it through PayPal, of course you have to pay them, but whether it's a dollar transaction or a yen transaction or whatever, it's sort of agnostic. But that used to be a big deal. So now you're fortunate being able to have these types of things. This is a very quick chart of the Japanese yen versus the US dollar starting around 1970. Can you imagine going to Japan and getting 350 yen for $1, right? Most of my career was spent starting in here. And I remember very specifically when it was in like 78, right around here. And it was incredible because spending money in Japan, it was so precious. Like everything, when you took your US dollars and you converted it to yen, and then you bought a Subway token, or you bought a sandwich or a bowl of ramen or a beer or whatever, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this was like a $20 beer, it felt like. So things have changed somewhat. In the past couple of years, it's reversed a bit, so that it's flipped in that Japanese consumers who brought their yen to Hawaii thought it was cheap for a long time. But now it's kind of flipped back a bit in the other direction. So they look at it as not exactly cheap, a bit expensive, right? And in the past several weeks, things have gone a little bit more in favor of the yen. This is sort of a 1-month chart and then an annual chart, right? So if you look back, say maybe in September last year, it was a good time to go to Japan and spend money. Right now, it's gotten to be, I don't know, about 104 today or something, right? 107, something like that. But the point being, you don't have to focus on this every second of every day, but you need to understand the trends because it will affect your pricing over time. How do you give a quote, a price quote, and what are the terms? Try to do this in Japanese if you can, particularly if you're selling it in Japan, right? Try not to send them a price quote purely in English, because they're going to get bogged down in it. And the more you can help them buy from you, the better it'll be. So if you have somebody, a professional translator, somebody you have access to that can help you prepare price quotes in Japanese, it'll be extremely helpful for your business. The industry that you're selling into, understand what are the terms that are typical in that industry in Japan. For example, in that industry, do they usually pay 210 net 30, or do they pay net 45, or some things are net 90? Understand all of that. Also understand through your bank what a letter of credit is and how you might need to get one set up. We don't need to get into that right now, what that is. We cover letters of credit in a whole separate seminar under finance, but just know what it is, because you might be requested to do that, or you might need it from them, right? It's just a transaction where two banks are involved, and it protects both parties that don't know each other very well. Are you prepared to accept credit card payments, right? Can you accept all, whatever your system is, if it's PayPal or whatever, are you able to accept the Japanese credit cards that aren't necessarily used in the US system, right? I find a lot of people aren't prepared for that. The other thing is I found when you're selling to Japanese, or some other countries in Asia, you can be asked to accept staggered payments, and staggered payments would be something like this example. They pay you 40% when they place the order, they pay you another 40 when you deliver it, and then after they test it and kick it around for a while, 30 days or so, they'll pay you the remaining 10%. It's not common here, but it happens, and people might ask you for that. It's negotiable, you don't have to say yes, but just be prepared for that. Know the terms in the industry that you're selling to in Japan. After sales service, I think these guys can talk about it at great length too, but I think that for Japanese customers, it's more, the average Japanese customer, it's more important to them than it is to the average customer you would find in Hawaii or even in the mainland. And by after sales service, I mean, does your product need any kind of maintenance or tuning or oiling or I don't know what. It could completely depend on your product. But who does that, right? Who's going to do that if the product is in Japan, right? Do you need to stock any spare parts locally, right? Are you selling something that could completely die without a key part? If that's true, then you should think about stocking some of these parts locally. And then how do you price those spare parts, right? There's lots of strategies for these things. Warranty replacements, I find our companies here don't think about this at all. What if somebody buys a product here, they take it back to Japan, they realize, oh, it's broken or it doesn't work, it's not as advertised. How do you handle that? Or what if you have an online shop in Hawaii, somebody from Japan buys the product, you ship it to them and it's not up to snuff for whatever reason, right? Returns, fortunately, aren't highly common from Japanese customers, but they do happen. And how are you going to handle that if that happens to you, right? You're going to pay for shipping all the way back to Hawaii and then pay for shipping again for a new product to replace the one they just said? There's no correct answer to that question. I'm just suggesting you figure that out ahead of time. Shipping is a whole other seminar that we do. There's so much here with shipping, often called logistics, but I find our companies here are not spending enough time researching this ahead of time and understanding the whole process and the costs of the whole process, right? Know what it costs to ship to Japan, right? Shipping to a major port city like Yokosuka, that's easy because all the ships go there, right? Shipping to Tokyo by air, pretty straightforward because all the planes go there. But what if there's a lot of inland shipping from the boat to some inland city in the mountains, right? That's not cheap. Inland transportation in Japan is not cheap, right? So figure all of this stuff out ahead of time and know and find a shipping company and work with them very carefully and build those costs into your pricing. You have to understand that, and you cannot shock the customer in Japan with costs later that they weren't expecting because you didn't plan well enough. Do you need an export license? Maybe. Not many companies in Hawaii need an export license, but you never know. Check. Then of course you have to figure out, this is a big situation for Hawaii companies. Is it going by air or is it going by ocean, right? Big, big issue that we could spend hours and hours just going over that topic. You need insurance, again, the spare parts and the warranty replacements of shipping that. How does that work? And brush up on your Incoterms, and a link to Incoterms here are the international shipping terms like do we ship Ex Works, do we ship FOB, these types of things. Just understand it. We're not going to go through the detail here, but please understand it, because if you're going to start selling in Japan, you're going to have to be up on these terms. Sorry. Shipping from Hawaii to Japan, I just want to spend a minute on this, maybe more than a minute, because I think it's extremely worthwhile. When you're shipping one product to Japan from Hawaii, it's expensive. That's obvious, right? When you're shipping 10, it gets cheaper. We've got to get to the point where we're trying to ship as many as possible so that you're lowering your costs. And I put together this little simple thing, but this is based on some very actual data I have from several clients that I've worked with and trying to help them figure out. On the right side is Hawaii, going over to the left side is Japan. And it's just a little blue widget, let's call it, you're selling. It's a $25 widget, and you can fit it into one of these small flat rate boxes that USPS will give you for free. That flat rate box costs roughly $31 to ship to Japan. So you have a $25 thing that it costs you $31 to ship, and that's your total cost. So it's simple math, $31 per unit to ship. Now, if you can fit more into the bigger flat rate box, it's $87. Doesn't matter what it weighs, it's flat rate. It could be, this box could be full of feathers or it could be full of lead. It doesn't matter, it still costs $86 to ship. If you can get 24 of those in there, your per unit shipping cost goes down to $3.58, right? You've got to understand these things because it affects the total price. Now, if you can get 2,500 of them on a pallet, wrap up the pallet and consolidate it into a shipment in a 20 or 40 foot container, put it on a boat, it costs you $500 to ship that pallet, and your per unit cost for shipping goes down to about 20 cents, right? So the point being that when you get to that point, your market price in Hawaii should be basically the same as your market price in Japan when you're at that point. But when you're at one of these other points up here, your market price in Japan is going to be pretty expensive compared to what you would buy the same product for here, right? And these are the things we need to think about. Our Hawaii companies need to really spend a lot of time focusing on this. Here I put some hot links in here of places that you could talk to about shipping rates and what have you. But it's very important for the marketing people to get out into the world, meet the shippers, and understand the shipping process and the shipping costs down to the infinitesimal part of a penny, because it's critical to fulfilling price. Something that's come about in the past year, maybe 2 years at most, are these US fulfillment centers that are actually shipping to Japan now. And there's a pretty big one in Philadelphia, by the way. And they have very good rates that they've negotiated with the post office, much better than you could do. The problem is you have to stock product at that fulfillment center, and then they, but just keep that in mind.
Can I add one?
Please.
Nippon Express.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They do a twice a week and we'll pick up, but you have to do all the paperwork, like invoice and all that other stuff, but it's a direct flight, and then they'll do the inland delivery too. And it's like a per kilogram rate, so they have a sheet you can just look at. It's not bad actually.
That's good. Nippon Express, I've used them before. Good company, old company, strong company. Okay. Let's open up the panel and open up some discussion on price. Let me answer one quick question. Where do you check if you need an export license? This came in from Maui. The export license can be understood fully by the harmonized code that you're shipping the product under. Your shipping broker will know immediately whether or not you need an export license. Knowing what I know of your business, you don't need an export license. Okay. Do you have any more comments about price in general? We talked about it a little, about the premium part of the pricing, but
They still don't want to pay more than they want to pay. They're like humans everywhere. I was at the Ukulele Festival 2 weeks ago, and I think I spent 20 minutes with this lady over a $20 good that we were trying to sell. And I was getting frustrated because I'm like, just pick it already. And it's a wood product, so they're all natural and they're all different. But I mean, so my Japanese distributor was there, and he goes, I deal with this all the time. So that $20 might have been a real lot for her, and it could have been an expensive item, so she cared a whole lot about it. And it was an omiyage thing, like we talked about earlier, so she spent even more time picking out the exact perfect one for them, so.
How many ukuleles do you usually ship at one time?
We try to do a dozen.
And they go by air then?
They go by air, and we use, actually Nippon Express usually is the best rate to get a really good one.
Can you share roughly what is your unit price to ship? Can't be cheap to ship an ukulele, in a case.
Well,
right?
we don't ship it in the case. That's the other thing. We pack it very well without the case. With the case, it would be crazy expensive because that makes it very bulky. But the case, fortunately in Japan, they already have the same cases. So that's how we work that out. So that's another thing you might think about. Whatever you're shipping, do you need to ship it in that big box that you put it in here? If you have a distributor that can help you out with that kind of stuff. So for us, they're triangles, little triangles, so they fit very nicely, and we have the perfect box that fits like 6 or 12. So yes, we've thought about that very much, because the cheaper we get it, the better it sells over there. Too often I do see people not caring and just kind of packing stuff however, and it's like overpaying.
How would you handle warranties, or does your local agent distributor handle that?
So we use a distributor, but we're actually at a point where we may not be big enough to use a distributor, so this is coming up. So that's another thing you might want to, down the road is Japanese are getting a lot more used to working directly, and this is kind of the trend in the world. They like to work directly with manufacturers now. They like to get the better price. So I'm finding that with even our ukuleles. So there's a tipping point somewhere where a distributor makes sense and it doesn't make sense. And a lot more people in Japan want to buy direct. So we have probably going to be working with dealers. So that's an issue that we have to bring up, like the warranty. So most times that's where you have to say, look, it doesn't make sense to ship it back and forth to fix something that might cost $20 or $50 to fix. So it's almost a case by case, depending on what the issues are of the product. But that's where we have, ideally I would have someone in Japan that I could rely on that could service my product, like a luthier or someone who might be able to fix a small issue on our ukulele that if a dealer can't do it. So some dealers can, some dealers can't. Again, your customer, and you might want to limit your customers to only the dealers that can service their own product.
Okay. I'm sorry to keep asking you so many
It's
questions,
okay.
but do you have import duties because of the wood, or is there any issue with that?
It's an instrument, and actually I export both to Japan,
Yeah.
wood and. So the instruments, I think it's a 5% stringed instruments. And it also depends on that's the other thing, like the value of things. There's a harmonized code for under $100 ukulele and over $100. Because the market's grown in the last 10 years, so they keep popping out new harmonized codes, by the way. So we have a new one now for ukuleles, which we didn't have 10 years ago. But like the wood, in the world, they've tried to go no tariff on wood products in the world to make trade of wood, because everybody has wood that everyone else wants usually. But even wood, depending on the thickness, and I do have, things just got really harder for us. This is another thing that you guys might want to think about. So shell product, abalone, we use real shell as inlay into our product, and they weren't as strict years ago because it's in a final product. I buy my shell within the US, so it's not, there's no export-import on it, but as soon as I export it, the Fish and Wildlife Department, I have to have a permit for that, and I have to get it authorized every single time, whether it's one ukulele or 12, and that's done online. And now because of rosewood went on the CITES list. CITES is another one that you guys can go look up, but it regulates trade of flora and fauna and animal products. So basically, like turtle, whatever it is, wood, shell, anything. So The rosewood, which has been generally used in the world of instrument building around the world for every instruments, is suddenly on the CITES list. It got raised, so we have another layer of export inspection that we have to go through every single time, so it adds costs. So this was a big thing that came up actually for a lot of small companies that are selling one thing at a time to Japan online.
Yeah.
So a lot of shipments actually got stopped at the US Post Office earlier in 2017. Even ours got stopped. Like they just kind of, anyway, they're paying more attention, and so you just got to keep up on your product and like know that if you have those kinds of things in it, especially shell, that's probably the biggest one. Like wood products, once they're manufactured into a product, it's not really regulated.
Because it's dead. It can't carry
Because
bacteria.
right, it's dead, it's already a new HS code actually. But if you had like a nice table and had a whole bunch of shell inlay in it, the shell is more regulated than certain wood species. Now if the wood species is a regulated wood species, and you don't say what it is, might stop it and check. It doesn't mean they're gonna burn it and ban it, but
All right, good.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's great. The point is, I want the audience to understand that there are issues like this, and you need to understand it and get all of these inspection costs and all of these things baked into your price, because you can't shock the customer later and expect them to pay more. More comments on pricing, by the way.
Well, pricing for real estate is fixed in a way. I can't change it even if I want to. So what we do is to add after service, sales service. And that's why we're in the property management business too. All Japanese, 99% of Japanese who buys property here, they buy for vacation homes. So somebody have to take care of it, but they expect Japanese quality, Japanese people to service them. So all my staff are Japanese, and that's the part of the thing you have to take care of. They expect everything Japanese way, so
But that costs more.
a lot more.
Yeah. But so you have to bake that into your commission or what, your rent, your fee for the property management.
We built everything into a fee, but then they compare with American side too.
yeah.
And they complain.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
Phil, any comments on pricing?
Yes. Let me go back again and say that if you're going to have a company and you're going to sell something to Japan because it's from Hawaii, that because God put you here in this position, then make it unique and raise the price. You can't be in the business of undercutting somebody, because there's always somebody that's going to want to undercut you. So be in the position of promoting your product as really special. Everybody's got coffee, everybody drinks coffee, but your coffee is not only Kona, but it's something else and something else. If we go out to the restaurant, we get fried chicken, it's $5. If we get free-range fried chicken, it's like $7. If we get free-range grain-fed fried chicken, it's $9. So make your product special. And then you're going to be able to weather some of these things like changes in the currency a lot better. This is where my experience differs a little bit, because we tried wholesale and we actually had a hard time doing wholesale because we were making by hand all our different products. So if we got an order for 100 pieces in one day, we'd have to do them all by hand. So we needed a buffer, and we needed a way to help us with the pricing. So when we were selling here to tourists in our little store, the jewelry, after a while, people wanted to get it sized, and they want to get it fixed, and they want to get something else, but they weren't here. So we decided to get a location in Japan. So first of all, we thought, okay, we'll get a location that is an office, and we have to get a manufacturing place to fix things, and then we have to get a little showroom. And when we started looking at the prices, it was just prohibitive. But Japan has buildings that are designated Soho, small office, home office. And so what we wound up was renting a small office, home office for about $2,700 a month. But in that small office, home office, we get to stay there. We put our little repair department, we put an office, we put everything else. If you have to go to Japan, it costs a lot for a hotel. So if you can get something like this, and there's much less expensive places, but you can do your whole business out of this Soho location, and downstairs at a Soho, you can meet people and sell your product. So that's pretty cool, actually. So it's a really good way to take care of things. I wish I could use containers to ship my product to Japan, but everything goes in a FedEx box, and FedEx collects the duties, and so that really helps us. It's a little bit different experience than a lot of other people.
What are your duties?
For jewelry, I believe it's around 5%, and then you have if I'm selling, it's 8%, which is the tax, or if I don't really do any wholesale, so I can't tell you that experience. But the pricing is something that will just kill you every time. So we needed a buffer. And at some point when we were trying to figure out what to do, when we got a little Soho, we were invited to go to a Hawaiian show in Japan that wanted us to sell Hawaiian products because that's what the Hawaiian show was about. So these Hawaiian shows have hula people, and they have food from Hawaii, and then they have all these booths, and you can get a booth, I don't know, maybe $500 or $1,000, and it's a 2 or 3 day show. So we were invited to go to the first show. We went to the first show, and at the first show, in 2 days, we did $17,000. And so I said to myself, this is a long time ago, I said, damn. Maybe there's something here. So we found out there's other shows, and there's lots of shows. We do 1 or 2 shows a month in Japan. Now we get to meet our customers, and we don't just give them a card that says we're our company. We'll give them a little something about $50 off on your next purchase at our store here.
Beautiful.
So we're talking to those people here, and then they show up there, and then they show up here and buy something from us. So if you can have a little retail location here, they will come and see you because they love you, because you're from Hawaii and you have this product that they just totally love. So my experience about pricing is a little bit different. But I think for anybody that's wholesaling and retailing, start out with your product being so special and so unique that you need to charge a little bit more because it is that unique. And don't try and undercut, because there's always somebody out there that wants to undercut you. When we didn't give terms, when we tried wholesale for a while, we didn't give terms. We said, we'll ship it to you and you pay us. And they did, because we're from Hawaii. We got something special, And so that really worked.
Good. Thank you. Eric, any comments?
I just can't imagine how tough it is to be, doing what you guys all do. I applaud you. It must be so hard. Just hearing all the stuff that has to happen with shipping and warranty service and blah blah blah. It's just wow. The thing I'll say is that so you might want to think about the scale of your business. What's the sweet spot for your particular business, and then that might help you to determine, do I want to even get into the pre-arrival? We look at it as in tourism terms, right? So is it pre-arrival to Hawaii, or is it post-arrival? And that might dictate how you sell your product or service. So maybe I'm just saying an answer is maybe you might want to start post-arrival after they get here, because then you avoid a lot of the shipping and so on and so forth. And then as your business grows, then you can reach out or venture out and sell in country. And I know a lot of product that started like that and have been highly successful with post-arrival first. And then the product got so popular and grew and grew and grew, and then you are able to sell, pre or in country. So, again, every business is different. Your sweet spot is different. What your nut is everybody's different. So, that might be something that you want to consider. Surely what, Rob alluded to earlier, the omiyage market is, in my opinion, wide open. So, something to think about. You might want to start post-arrival and then grow your business where you can be in both places, but and then globally, hopefully, right, international. Yeah.
I got something, excuse me, I just want to add a little bit.
Sure, please.
The Hawaiian shows gave us a buffer, and I wanted to go a little bit further with that. The Hawaiian shows allowed you to sell your product retail. If you're if you're here and you have something that you're put 50 cents into and you're wholesaling for $1, then the person that you're wholesaling to is probably going to take that $1 and sell it for $3, because triple key is a normal in a lot of businesses. So when you go to the Hawaiian shows, you're not selling it for the $1 that you would sell wholesale, you're selling it for $3. So you've done a couple of things. You've found out, you've got customer feedback instantly on your product. You've also got some money coming in, and you've also proved to other people you want to wholesale to that you can sell this product in Japan for X amount of dollars. So you get to tweak your product all at the same time, and if you go to enough Hawaiian shows, you can keep a stock level there. So that kind of a buffer is very important, because if you have a product that you want to sell in Japan and it can't sell at the Hawaiian shows, I don't know where you're going to sell it. But you get so much feedback immediately at the Hawaiian shows. And some of those Hawaiian shows have 30 to 50,000 people come in 2 days. So you're gonna meet people, you're gonna get feedback, all of that. So.
Great, thank you. Let's jump into the third P is place. And this is where we talk a little bit about where is your product going to be sold? And I put this up after a long career of doing things myself versus having agents and having distributors and things. And I found you have these options available. You can go direct, meaning you can sell your product directly to your customers in Japan. It's easy to sell directly here, as Phil was just saying, but this is in Japan. If you try to sell your product directly, what does that mean? Well, you could do it from your website and ship it from here. But really, if you're going to make money, you're going to go to Japan, spend time in Japan, or hire somebody in Japan. You yourself could move to Japan and start selling your product that way. You have the most control, but it's the most difficult because you're sort of on your own. And I put $5 signs because the payoff is highest with that option. You could get an agent for you. That's sort of one level down from that, and you try to manage that agent. You generally, if you work closely with the agent, you can control the agent, and you have a good working relationship. Payoff is not as high, but also the risk is not as high as going by yourself. Distributor arrangement is where you start losing a lot of control, okay? They do what they want to do. Then one level below that is a reseller where, as Phil just alluded to, they buy it from you and then they basically sell it for whatever they can get. That's a lot different market. You don't control very much. There's a lot of people who like that. They say, well, I don't know, I get a check every month from these guys. I don't know what they do with the product once they get it. Maybe that's okay. But if you're really serious about doing it, that's not the best option, in my opinion. And then, of course, there's always the option of doing nothing. But to me, that's not an option. But you might find, after you start doing a lot of market research, that Japan just isn't right for your product, right? So it's better to focus on something else than spend the money doing that. Here, I've given just lots of links to different department stores that you can check out and look at and see if you think that your product would fit into that department store. And then if you do, you could contact them directly, but more than likely they will want an agent in the middle of the transaction to help you do that. The more you could do that in Japanese, of course, the better it'll be for everybody. Yep.
Is there any potential to lose omiyage sales here locally if you are selling in Japan? Because sometimes I notice that our Japanese customers do send things to Japan for them through the mail. They seem like, oh, it's not as special because anyone in Japan can get it.
Okay, the question is, would if you have enough product stocked in Japan at stores and there's plenty of inventory and it's easy to buy, would that cannibalize omiyage sales in Hawaii? And I suspect yes, if your product was such that it was a commodity like ketchup, and it's easy to buy a bottle of ketchup there versus buying the same ketchup here. then sure, I think that that's probably the case. But if it's unique enough, and it's what I believe most Hawaii companies are selling or should be selling, then I don't find that to be much of a problem. I think what would be the best possible model is if you have some product stocked in Japan and it could be purchased locally, but they come to Hawaii, they find the product, they love it, they can't believe it, how they ever lived without it, and then when they get home, they realize, oh, I can actually buy this over at such and such a store. Not every store has it, but this particular store has it. I could even buy it online in Japan and get it in a day or 2 or 3 versus waiting a few weeks to make the same purchase from Hawaii and have it shipped from Hawaii. I think that the company that can set up that arrangement has the highest margin and the highest possibility of success. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Please spend some time looking at these sites. Now, most of them won't have an English site, some of them will, but at least you can go through the sites and see the types of products that they're selling. These are apparel stores and e-commerce. Grocery stores. This is a very tough business. If you want to get into a Japanese grocery store, you have your work cut out for you. But they would be very loyal customers. There's a lot of testing that would have to go on ahead of time, then testing by the store. Then they would make sure that you could produce enough. That's tricky, but great business if you can do it. All right. Place. Any comments on place? Jorma? Sal?
No, just make sure. Bust it again.
It's the button on the bottom. Hold it.
There we go. Nope, channel 2. I don't know.
Maybe just speak loudly.
Try speaking loudly. I'll just put this here for show. Want to pass this along here? Not particularly, just it's all about knowing your market. Pretty much there's someone living everywhere in Japan that can use what you need. So we do a lot of those trade shows though that he was talking about. And ours are very particular to the industry. So ours are more geared towards the music show as opposed to the Hawaii show. So you might want to consider that too. I've done shows, for example, like the Tokyo Gift Show. As much as I encourage people to do that, it's really not the show for me to sell any ukuleles. And I've known that. And it's more, the only reason I really do that is was for branding and marketing. But I still have yet to sell one ukulele at that show. And it's just not really the buyer because I already know that randomly walking around, not everybody's going to want an ukulele. So, but there are other shows that are specific to the music industry that do happen every year in Yokohama and different ones. So like it really depends on your product. You know, some products anyone can use, whereas some are very particular and demographics and probably income levels and stuff like that. So.
Are there stores that stock your product in Japan?
Yes. And mostly they're music dealers because ours is so expensive that you won't really find ours randomly in a gift shop. Whereas you might have $100, so again, an ukulele is also very different one from another. You can have a $50 omiyage, $100 omiyage ukulele, and ours, which are probably average price $1,000 to $2,000, it's considered a very high-end product, so have to be in very particular places that have to be serviced. The people have to be very knowledgeable about the product, so mainly that's for us. It's music dealers, and there's probably only 20 or 30 main ones. There's some chains. That's the other thing too, chains. some of your market has chain stores in Japan. That's another big, other than department stores, figure out if your product has like a chain store that sells it, so like a bookstore or whatever it is. So we do have some music chain stores, and I think one of our customers, I think they have like 250 locations all across Japan. So, that's all.
Thank you.
For our sales purpose, distribution of the real estate to Japan, we actually partner with financial institutions. We're going after certain net worth individuals in Japan. So usually you're going after somebody who can afford more than $1 million homes, vacation homes. So usually net worths have to be over 10 million or more. So we only have a small niche market we're going after. So we partner with the banks, financial institutions, certain CPAs, sometimes with a high-end car dealership. Their clientele is wealthy individuals.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Very good.
As far as distribution, what I recommend is that you do have a website. It used to be that they were very expensive, but you can get a template now for $100 to $300, import your own pictures and words and prices and so forth, and you just need to have that so that people can find you. And also that you can promote your company as what we talked about before, your logo, your colors and all that kind of stuff, and pricing, because then when you establish your price on the internet, then you're establishing a price that other people say, oh, I guess this is what they really sell for, so then you can establish your wholesale price also. The shows that I was talking about for selling are the Hawaiian shows that are retail, and that does the same thing. You get to put your company out there. You can actually meet a lot of distributors at the retail shows because they will go there looking for products from Hawaii. So that is something else you can think about. And then after that, I think distribution just depends on your product, where it's going to go.
Do you guys have any advice about if a small company from Hawaii goes to one of these shows, it's very likely that lots of distributors will approach them about bringing on the product. How do you find a good distributor? I mean, how do you separate the wheat from the
I think you do some research with that, and I think the thing that you can do to actually bulk up your business is that if you're not in the position to go to Japan all the time, then you get that distributor to show up at the same retail shows, to sell retail at the Hawaiian shows, and to do the wholesale business. I don't think that conflicts with selling to a store chain that you're selling at the Hawaiian, because it's just like promoting your product.
How do you deal with, I guess, bringing inventory from Hawaii into Japan for that show? If you're bringing a huge amount?
Can you repeat the question for the mic?
Well, how do you deal with the inventory going to?
If it's bulkier items,
Yeah, bulkier items. The people that I know of that take things, they just store them someplace, and they use them for the next show. So when you're starting out and you don't know what's going to happen, you need to take over a certain amount of product that you kind of think would, if you were very fortunate, would sell in the 2 or 3 days. And once you find out the show schedule, you could line up for a couple different shows, and then you could store things there, and then when you go back, you just use that for the next show, and then you can kind of work with that. I mean, I've seen people take over 100 omiyage shirts for a show. So there's a lot of ways to do it. And the shows, to tell you the truth, that are the Hawaiian shows are sanctioned by the government and all those kinds of things over there. And it's what the promoters will call is a gray area. So because we have a corporation in Japan, we pay taxes on everything. But if you're from Hawaii and you're going to one of these 2 different shows, you can collect in cash, you can use Square, you can use all kinds of stuff. And there's ways that you have to look at to do that. And nobody ever shows up and says, oh, you didn't pay the state tax, you didn't pay the government tax, or things like that, because they're more of a show to promote people and their wares and stuff, and they hope it will grow into something else. So there's a lot of give and take there, but yes, if you're going to take over some product, you need to think about doing a couple shows just to see how it's gonna go, and then take enough product to store and move on.
At your shows, what's the most common form of payment?
Credit card, always credit card, and it used to be the PayPal. You could do, if you had a PayPal here, you could just go on your computer and do PayPal, but PayPal doesn't work anymore in Japan
Right.
because they changed to something other. Square works for us because we have a location in Japan, and just to tell you how that works, you can't do anything in Japan unless they know who you are and you have an address. So when you finally start your business and want to move to Japan with something, you start with that. You have to have an address, they need to know who you are, then you can go sign up for Square, you can do all that kind of stuff. But you may be able to use your Square online from here, because it's all online.
Well, there's a whole other seminar we can have about setting up branch offices versus representative companies and all these things, about how you get going in Japan locally when you're ready to set up payments there and that sort of thing. That's a whole separate topic, but it's not complicated to have a branch office or a level below that as a representative office that can collect payments, and you can set up a local bank account and those sorts of things. Please.
So if you're taking your product, putting it on the airlines, and you're going to Japan, you have to go do customs and pay all of that?
I'm just saying that I've seen that. Because I put everything in a FedEx box, they collect the taxes and I don't have to worry about that. But one of the reasons that we started a location in Japan, because if you ship something back here to repair, they don't really care where it came from or it's coming back to the country of origin, they charge you tax again. And then you ship it back to Japan, they charge you tax again. So that's why it's important to take your things to Japan and kind of leave them there. So, but
And this Soho, you call it,
SOHO, it's a small office, home office, and so the whole building is designated as, it's easier if I tell you, oh, this fellow that lives next door in the Soho is an insurance man and he meets people downstairs and sells insurance. So now you kind of get the idea of what's going on. But,
So you can rent your Soho for a long term,
yes,
and leave your products there and come back?
that's what we do, and it just works. We've had the same place for 12 years, actually, and when you kind of figure out the price of having all these different locations, as opposed to a Soho, the Soho is so cheap that it doesn't.
What's the central location for Soho, Tokyo? I mean, Tokyo's the huge.
Well, I think you'd have a little research, but there's Soho places everywhere. We happened to find one that was close to TCAT, so we get off the plane, we take a bus to TCAT, we walk across the street and we're home.
TCAT is a Tokyo City air terminal where it's a big bus and subway center where the planes have buses that come in.
Well, I've been to Japan, I love Japan. That's why I was gonna ask you, my daughter speaks Japanese, she went to college there. But I'm really interested in that Soho situation.
It's a good model for a lot of people. So if you're going over to a show and you're taking a bunch of product and you stuff a few suitcases full of product, generally that's okay, But that's not a business model that you want to get stuck in.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once a year or so, okay, but if that is really your model of distribution, it's not going to work for you in the long term because you're going to get caught and they're going to come back to you for back taxes, right? So once in a while, it's perfectly legitimate, but after a while, you've got to be
When you
careful.
first go over to stock up your Soho.
Right.
But then you FedEx it over, that way you don't worry about anything.
FedEx,
Correct.
once you're in the country, actually Black Cat will ship stuff everywhere, and that's a good thing to use. And I didn't mean to say to circumvent a lot of the taxes and so forth, but when you're getting started, there's a lot of different things that you can do. Freight forwarders will ship everything, and that's something else that we'll get into at a later date. So.
Any comments? Okay, I have a couple quick questions for you guys.
Hopefully we get some.
Just real quick, just one short comment on this. We've seen a lot of businesses go over, and the distribution channel. Just make sure you do your homework, because if you think it's a one-step process and you just forget about it, make sure you know what every step of the way in your distribution process, because I've seen a lot of businesses get hurt not understanding the distribution channel. And so just do your homework. Make sure you just do your homework and you know every step of the way.
Can
That's
you
all.
give an example though, because I'm fuzzy on what you just said.
Okay.
Like, what should we be aware of?
First thing, Google 'em.
Yeah.
No, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Just start searching the names.
Right.
Whoever they are.
It'll be the easiest way is to do that first. But when you get in country, the question is how do you know if the business or distribution channel is reputable, right? And that you can depend on them. You have to go and get the intelligence and market, and you have the professionals right here that you can go to as well. But I would just caution in thinking that, because we've seen a lot of cases, during I've been doing tourism for 25 years, we've seen people get hurt really not understanding the distribution channel. I'll give a quick example. One distribution channel we saw, this business lost over $1 million in Japan, but they had 4 parts of the distribution channel, and they didn't understand the political relationship between all 4 parts. So they thought they had it wired, and they paid this distribution channel. And the most important part of the distribution channel was the last part, where it was getting sold in a very big chain of convenience stores in Japan. And it was just not working. And later we find out it's because the second person or organization in the distribution chain is not politically aligned with that last part. And so you had internal conflict in the distribution channel, which then affected the sale of the product and even the shipment of the product, and then it affected the distribution. And the business could not figure out what was going on, but kept investing money. The product was a great product, and it still is a great product, but they lost a big amount of money. And so that's all I'll say is that do your homework. You got the experts here to ask, but just make sure you understand that part of your business as well. That, once it gets there, how does it get distributed?
Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Where do we get data for the tourist market here? Like, how many tourists are coming in? What is the omiyage market that we can target?
The question is, I'm repeating the question for the online audience, so I can be able to hear your voice. The question is, where do we get data about tourism and the omiyage market and what have you? Thank you. So, Eric, I know you have all of that data, but I can tell you, I mine that data a lot on the state tourism website. There's an incredible amount of data, right? Actually, I think that that's something that the state does a fantastic job of, is getting all of that data. You can find out a lot about Japan, but everywhere else too. Korea, Taiwan is growing, China's growing, Canadian, West Coast, East Coast, what city they came from, where they boarded the plane, if they came here from Nagoya, they came here from Tokyo, they came here from Osaka, whatever. It's very, very interesting. And how long they're here, how long a Japanese tourist is here versus a Canadian tourist, how much money they spend while they're here versus a German tourist. Very interesting data. In fact, I caution you, checking it out, because it's kind of like you'll go in there and you'll just come out several days later. Yeah, you haven't blinked. It's just, a fantastic amount of valuable information. Sorry, please.
That's the answer.
Sorry. Anyway, it's all free. You don't have to do anything in particular, really, to get to it
Just
either.
go to Hawaii Visitors Bureau or
Either
Yeah.
either DBED has all of that data, and then you can as well go to Hawaii Tourism Authority website as well. So either one.
Do you guys have an API for that yet? An API for that yet?
What's
That
an
data
API?
source? Well, like just the data so you can
It's
cross-reference.
supposed to be open
I
source.
saw it a couple of you, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's been updated, but.
I'm not sure, you might be able to just export it as CSV
Okay.
usually. But dbed.hawaii.gov would have, look at the research section.
Something like 1.6 million Japanese will come here this year through that airport, which blows my mind how they get their way through that airport. Anyway, it's a fantastic amount of data, and I highly recommend. Okay, so please.
Sorry, going back to the thing about checking out distributors or whatever. I'm not sure if you mentioned commercial service
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Each new country, you always
Yeah.
have that, service there to help to support.
That's a good point. Later in the presentation, I'll show you some resources from US government side and the Japan government side and the Hawaii state government side. But a very good resource that you could check out is the US Embassy in Tokyo, and the commercial service officers there can do some due diligence work on distributors or agents that you're thinking of getting involved with. That's a great source. And then also the American Chamber of Commerce in Japan. There's the main branch is in Tokyo, but there's also a big branch in Osaka. And so people there will know likely the reputation of the agent or distributor you're interested in working with. Please.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think a number that people don't understand is that there's probably 600,000 to 700,000 people in Japan studying the hula for Hawaiian music.
Absolutely.
And that's number one. But there's another comment, mentoring a group of Shawara University going to a study mission in Japan, and they're looking at startups, co-working spaces, a lot of things that the HE here are in Japan today, and trying to make connections with Hawaiian people doing a lot of things there.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. Real quick, a couple quick questions that came in. These two are from Maui. Regarding pricing, my experience in the States is that it's harder to raise your price than lower it. Well, I think that's pretty global. For those of us new to export in Japan, is it smarter to start our pricing on the high side in anticipation of these extra fees, then drop as we can when things stabilize? I would like to answer that emphatically with a yes. Start high and go from there. And it goes back to what we've been talking about earlier, is position yourself as a premium product, and the pricing will not be that extreme an issue later on. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I think that's totally the way to go, and you don't really need to drop your price. You can have a promotion. You can have a once a year something.
Well, we're coming up to that.
And so the other thing I wanted to say, as I remember about working in Japan, is there's a company in Japan that the Japan government has. It's free to anybody who wants to use it. It's called JETRO, J-E-T-R-O, and they will help you by lining up people you can talk to if you need help in Japan.
One final question on this topic. I'm curious if any of the panelists have experience doing e-commerce in Japan, specifically with Rakuten or Amazon Japan. You do have experience?
I had.
That was what I kind of figured you were going to say, but go ahead.
I got in on Rakuten early on. It's probably changed now, but it was crazy difficult.
I don't think it's changed.
Like, very expensive, high fees, a lot of technological like rules you had to follow to get stuff in there. So I don't know about now, but I think even easier is, well, yeah.
In my opinion, the Rakutens and the Amazons are towards the bottom of this list, meaning you're just going to put product there and it's kind of like spray and pray. You just throw it out there and hope something sticks and somebody buys it, and you have very, very little control over that. I'm not trying to knock them. I certainly buy a lot of things from Amazon.com, as does anybody that lives in Hawaii. But Amazon.co.jp is a little bit of a different animal. They're very good. They have a lot of product, but again, it's kind of fire and forget. You just put it over there, they sell it, and if they sell it, they sell it. If they don't, they don't. And that's pretty much what it comes down to.
I will add though, as opposed to Rakuten though, they're actually more of a personalized site, and you go out and market it. So it's a lot of these small business owners out there, and so my wife, when we were there, did a ton of shopping on Rakuten, and it's like, it's almost like the Etsy of America. And so you do have to market it and put it out there, as opposed to Amazon, where it is just kind of blasting it out there. But I just found it too cumbersome. And I had and by the way, this was not me doing it. This was actually my Japanese employee who had a hard time with this. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's jump straight into, unless there's no more questions. Yeah, please, I'm sorry.
There's a
quick question on pricing, for a negotiation. Do you know how much they like to negotiate down from the price you offer? 10%, 15%, 20%? Do you have some comments on that?
To my mind, it's not like Korea. It's not like Italy. There's room for negotiation, but in my opinion, the Japanese customers in Japan will want to negotiate with you because they think you're American, so you'll want to negotiate, right? Generally, if you go in, if you tend to follow this model that we're preaching, where you have a premium product with all of this Hawaii aloha baked into the product, you should not have to enter into extreme negotiations, right? They won't ask. It's hard to generalize, but I can't imagine a Japanese buyer asking you for a 20% discount, right? They could ask you for 2, 3, 4, 5%, but I don't know. What do you think?
My experience is the Japanese do not ask for very much at all.
Yeah.
But you need to have some throwbacks to them. Well, my product is like this, and
Yeah.
you need to do
This,
this.
as you said, the story has to be good.
Yeah,
The story that backs up the product. The story involves the product, the story involves you and what you bring to the company. If you have a very good story, you can counter any of those negotiation comments. Please.
With regards to the discounting, if they're coming to the stores here, they will always ask for discounts.
Well, yeah, because in the guidebook it says Americans like to negotiate, you know, so they ask that question. But I don't think you really have to go there. If your story is good, your product is good, everything is there, this is the price, that's what they're used to. If you go shopping in Japan, you can't negotiate for anything, right? You go into a market and say, I'd like a discount, everybody's gonna look at you like, who is this? You know? Well, this is Japan, right? It doesn't happen there. So the more, again, you can get your Japanese signage, get your Japanese price list, get all of that taken care of, I don't think you're gonna have that much anymore, right?
Well, it depends on the product. And I know his product and I know mine. So I think handmade stuff, they feel there's some like, how did you decide that price? Okay,
It's possible.
It's not a box of chocolates that has a 1995 sticker on it. And so I can understand it.
Or when they come here.
Yeah. What is your product?
Well, for our 3 stores, they will always ask for discounts. When I go to Japan, the Japanese stores that sell our product, they don't ask for discounts. But
Yeah.
it is when they come here, if you don't give them a discount, a lot of them will walk.
So how much do you give to them? That's the question. How much discount do you give to them?
10%.
Well, so now you're in, the guidebook is saying, oh, this guy will give you 10%, no problem.
Yeah, increase your price and adjust for it.
All right, let's move forward. This is the last of the 4 Ps, promotional strategy. Promotion means what I think a lot of people associate with marketing. This is doing your promotion, getting out there and getting the product out and doing it. But I would argue that this is not necessarily as important or more important than any of the other 4 Ps. The other 4 Ps are certainly will greatly affect your pricing, but this one I think is where people start to have fun because it's more nuts and bolts. So we'll get into the weeds a little bit. We've talked about this enough today, but I has to be a takeaway, a key takeaway from here, that you should be looking at premium products. Again, use words like wholesome, fresh, natural, authentic, unique, these types of things to get your products at the premium pricing level. That's what we want to see for our Hawaii companies. And I think that that's what Japanese consumers are looking for, actually, from Hawaii. Let's talk about Japan in English, okay? They don't go together. They're like oil and water. I can't stress this enough. You cannot be afraid to use Japanese language in your signage, your website, your marketing messages, what have you. You've got to get this under control. Find a professional translator that you can work with and get it going. I put up here a couple of websites that I've been using for years. jlearn.net is great for words, phrases, what have you. Very, very good. And managed in Japan, actually. Google Translate, I don't know who manages that, but that's not where you're going to build your marketing messages, okay? Don't do that. It's good for a word or two, but once you add that third word, you could be telling somebody to go to hell. And I speak and read Japanese. I'm just telling you, I avoid it. There's a great app. Here's the logo for that app. It's called Japanese. They have a website called Japanese app. I love it. I refer to it, I don't know, 100 times a day on my phone, and it's just great for phrases and for words. I've learned so much from that app since it became available. Let's talk about discounted sales. Phil referred to this a little bit earlier. Everybody's heard of Fukubukuron, the Hatsuri sales. The reason I bring this up is I think that you should be able to time your marketing and your sales around what's going on here. Know what these dates are on your calendar. So if there are people visiting Hawaii, you can tell them, oh, now is our summer sale, right? Put it in Japanese. They use the katakana for sale is one of the biggest words in Japan, used when you do a Google search on what is the most commonly used words in the Japanese language. Sale is always near the top, right? In the United States, it's I, like I, me, is the #1 word. There it's sale. So isn't that interesting? It's not even a Japanese word. They adopted it into the language, sale. So the point is, get to know all of this stuff. That's one of the English words that they do know. Nobody's going to come into your store and say, what is sale? Everybody knows that says sale, right? Guaranteed. Use it to your advantage. Social media in Japan, I think this is really interesting. There's a lot of data here, and you can look over it later, but what I'm suggesting is Instagram. Start with Instagram and push Instagram out to Twitter and to Facebook. It's all free. You can do it easily. Lots of YouTube traffic in Japan. One of the highest YouTube users in the world is Japan. You can't go wrong with that. But I like Instagram. It gets our Hawaii products out there, and it's growing very quickly in Japan. Twitter is big, very big in Japan. Maybe not so big here in Hawaii, but it's very big in Japan. Line is another one used by 60-some million Japanese every day. It's a Korean company, actually, Naver, but they have a lock on the Japanese market with Line. And it's not entirely clear to me that Line can be used well for small businesses. I've seen some people try, but I think that for Japanese consumers who are interested in products from Hawaii, they will have Instagram accounts that they use often, and I just don't think you can go wrong there. There's some others, LinkedIn, Snapchat. LinkedIn, obviously a little bit older audience, but not that popular in Japan, not as nearly as popular as LinkedIn would like it to be. Snapchat is for a younger video crowd. This new icon on the bottom is snow. That's a Asian, but it's got a kind of a Japanese following for younger people for videos, similar to Snapchat. So if that happens to be your audience, I'd look at potentially getting a snow account. This I thought was interesting. I just got this data off of some Japanese government site that was tracking media consumption and what have you. And it's about satisfaction with social media platforms in Japan. Very recent data that Instagram is right up there, basically tied with Line, which I thought was fascinating. So that Instagram users are really pleased with the service, basically. So just keep that in mind. These are my social media recommendations. Fundamentally, it's use Japanese as much as you can. Have some separate Japanese language posts. Try to get out of using Gmail and Yahoo and these types of things as your main company address. Try to get a top-level domain like, say, my company's Insight Interasia. So I would try to get out of insightinterasia@yahoo.com and try to start using, rob@insightinterasia.com. It's so much more professional in terms of dealing with customers, but dealing with customers in Japan, they look at that and say, oh, okay, these guys are for real, that's a real company. It's very cheap to set these things up. It's not a complicated issue. And I also suggest you've got to get going on a database and maintaining a database. And I go from left to right as to what I think the most important fields are in a database, are the email, the name of the company, the name of the customers in Japanese and English, then their address, telephone number. You can't, when you're filling out a database, you can't get all of that information, but obviously you need an email address to be able to keep in touch with people. Put some verbiage on your website. Then this part, Nitsuite, is sort of about us, the rough translation. So have a Nitsuite part of your website that explains your story, why you have a premium product, why your product deserves to get a higher price than some other things that are out on the market. Oh, these are two social media platforms, Hootsuite and Buffer, that you get an account with them, and then with one button push, you send out your social media posts to many different platforms. Like with one post, you can push a button and send it out to Instagram, Facebook, Google Plus, and everything, Twitter, all in one thing. It saves you some time. It's not exactly allows you to make personalized posts, especially with hashtags on Instagram, but it's useful if you're in a rush. And they both have free accounts. Email newsletters, I think this is extremely important. Sending out email newsletters, at least quarterly. And the benchmarks that we're seeing now are 25% open, 5% click-through, 0.5% unsubscribing from your newsletters, right? If you don't have the wherewithal to have a Japanese database and an English or American database, then you could send your bilingual newsletters to everybody. Put English at the top and then Japanese after that, or one English paragraph, one Japanese paragraph, one English paragraph, one Japanese paragraph. Now, an incredible amount of debate in the marketing community in Japan about what fonts to use. So I've given you a link there. That's a whole other discussion, whether it's Mincho or Gothic. There's many fonts you could use, but it's pretty simple, just picking one of the most simple ones. Like I think the font I generally use in English is Tahoma, and you'll want your marketing messages to all match. So you're using the same font on your website as you're using on your business cards, and you're using on your printed literature, and you're using here and there, right? So make sure you pick the font and go with it. So similar to English, if you're using Helvetica versus New Times Roman or what have you, it all gives you a different feeling about certain things, right? And the Japanese fonts are the same way. So pay attention to that. They're not all the same. I don't know how well you can read this, but this is a service that I use when I send out marketing emails. And let me see if I slide my mouse over here. Basically, this would be an email address, and what I'm able to see is how often somebody has opened my email, where they opened it from, and what program they were using. Very useful tool. So this person that opened my email 22 times, do you think I'd want to call them and say, hey, what's going on? How are you? What's happening today, right? They're interested in what we're selling. Customer relationship management software. You have to start doing something. This can be your database, right? There's plenty of companies to use. I like this one called Insightly because it integrates well with Gmail. But there's many. Salesforce.com is probably the biggest. But we have to get going on that. Trade shows, we talked about this a lot, and we'll open this up to the panel because they have a lot of experience. In Japan, there's a lot of use of these QR codes. If you scan that card right there with your phone, you'll get my business card, basically, that's what that is. But you need to start putting this stuff on your business cards and on your literature that you're sending out to people. It's very common to use that. Another big mistake every American will make, not just in Hawaii, is they use letter-sized paper, right? In Japan, well, basically the rest of the world, is all A4, right? And what happens is you print something on A4 size paper, you take it to a trade, you print something on 8.5 by 11 letter size paper, you take it all to a trade show, and the Japanese customers will pick it up and say, oh, that's nice, I like that, and then immediately they're going to throw it away because it doesn't fit in any of their filing systems or anything like that, right? So try to get everything done on A4. Another key point is I meet so many companies from Hawaii that go to the trade show. Say the trade show is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They get there Tuesday night, they set up on Wednesday, work the show, work the show, work the show. Friday night they go to Haneda and leave, right? They don't spend any time going out and seeing stores and where are the products sold and what does the packaging look like and how do people pay and what do the bags look like and what are the hours of the stores and what are the discounts and what is this and what is that. Got to spend time out in the market looking around. We have a High Step International Trade Show seminar coming up May 10th. Specifically in here we're going to address trade show issues, what to do before a trade show, what to do while you're at a trade show, but probably more importantly what to do after the trade show and how to follow up with people. I think we covered this a little bit already, but I'm just putting it out there as it is an option for some people. It's not my preferred option, but it is an option. Rakuten now has 3 big fulfillment centers across Japan. So that Amazon has 11. They're smaller, but they're 11 spread out in Japan. Yahoo, you probably haven't heard that name in years, but it's still big in Japan. Probably if it weren't for Japan, and the Alibaba money behind it, Yahoo probably could have disappeared a while ago. But Yahoo is still, relatively popular in Japan, and it's still, I think, the second biggest search engine, not far behind Google, actually, believe it or not. And as I talked earlier about PayPal integrations, now there are U.S. organizations that'll fulfill orders and ship to Japan for you. And there's one that I've worked with that's near Philadelphia.
Isn't Rakuten doing that now too?
Yeah, Rakuten does it in this country. So this is some interesting data that you need to take this away, in that if you're dealing with Japanese, you're dealing with people on mobile phones, much more so than this country, meaning 60% of all online transactions where money changed hands in Japan were done from mobile phones. It's still quite different from this country, where mobile phone transactions are growing and popular. In Japan, it's much more common. And if you think about it, it makes sense because a lot of people live in cities and a lot of people are on subways or public transportation. What else do you do except look at your phone or look at your iPad and do things and shop and whatever? And so they spend money that way. And I think that your website then has to be what? Look good on a mobile phone, and it has to be easy to buy products from your website on the mobile phone. So make sure that your website is mobilized, as we say. By the way, e-commerce here, when Japanese tourists come to Hawaii, very little is done on their phones or what have you, but it's purely logic because they don't have a roaming plan. Right? Like if you go to Japan, it's very expensive for you to walk around and use a roaming data plan. Same for them when they're here, right? These are some print publications that give you some costs, like these types of magazines, if you wanted to put ads in any of these magazines. These are some of the ones that are sort of here locally. And then I also put up the rate cards for the Hanaho magazine in Hawaiian Airlines. Now, some of these numbers aren't for the faint of heart, I understand that. But when you look at, this one is a pretty thick Hawaii-specific magazine that's sold in Japan. This is for the Japanese market, so people would be looking here. They would buy this if they were planning a trip to Japan or what have you. Roughly $10,000 a month to put an ad in here. Right? That's not for the...
Who's on the back page?
Oh yeah, Honolulu Cookies on the back page, so I didn't even see that. So these are popular, and it's useful. I mean, it's most definitely a useful avenue, but you really have to have a marketing message that is singing to your target market segment before you're going to start spending that money. These two are sort of Hawaii-centric magazines available. And then there's just random magazines that are, Brutus is a big sort of men's magazine in Japan. They did a Hawaii special. So that's the kind of thing you could advertise in there.
What's the left one called? What is the name? Hawaii.
Oh, Hawaii, I'm sorry, Hawaii. In katakana. In the pink.
Oh, that's by Apple.
Yeah. Just some miscellaneous notes on promotion. There are some Japanese Hawaii files who blog about this, and some of those bloggers eventually put articles in magazines like this. So if you can find those bloggers and give them samples, get them to write about you, sometimes you have to pay them to write about you, okay, fine. But they are influential. They're what in marketing term is called influencers, and if they go out and really push the product, then we call them evangelizers, and that's what you want. It can be extremely useful, right? So try to find bloggers who are in your particular industry that have expertise in your area, and see if you can get them to write an article about you and get it onto the blog. It can be very, very effective from viral marketing. One other quick note in terms of marketing in Japan, it's now very easy for an American company to set up a telephone number in Japan so that somebody could call that number and you could answer it here, or you could have your agent answer it, or what have you. You do it all online virtually. The company I use is Ring Central, meaning, let's say we have a telephone number in Japan. Somebody calls that number, it gets forwarded to the Japanese staff, but if for some reason the Japanese staff can't answer it, it'll ring to my computer, and if for some reason I'm not seeing it on my computer, it'll ring to my mobile phone. But you can set up all these steps along the way so that you tell it when to go to voicemail or what have you. But I strongly recommend it because it looks like you have a very good presence in Japan. The problem is when the phone rings, you better have somebody that can speak Japanese that answers it, right? So it's very useful, and I think now it's maybe $15 a month. But for $15 a month, I think it's a fantastic service. Summary of the final promotional point. Do you have any comments on that? What do you do for advertising?
So that was one of our biggest mistakes. We didn't do enough. So that was the other thing that hurt us a lot along the way is, because when we're so focused on manufacturing and trying to get the quality down, there's 4 things there to remember, and they kind of have a lot of value. And so our marketing was not enough. So even a few of these things, like when you just mentioned the blogging people, I mean, it's hard to get people to your factory. You think like, oh, I'm in a ukulele factory, they'll just come because they're going like 2 blocks away. But they don't. It takes work to get them there and a lot of that kind of stuff. So we looked at advertising in some of these things, and for smaller companies, when you're starting up, they're just too cost prohibitive. So I think it's just a lot of it is the social media stuff, and so true. But that's a whole nother world that you have to figure out which one's going to work for you and focus on it.
There's no one solution I can offer you for social media and promotion. Again, it all comes back to your target market audience. And what are you trying to do? You know, if you sell, oh my gosh, I don't know, toys, and probably LinkedIn isn't the right thing. You know, if you're selling, you know, we work with a couple manufacturers of swimwear and bikinis, right? That's a different platform than LinkedIn.
But the advice there is find someone in Japan who is in the similar industry. So I started off with a partner in Japan, and so he's like the social media nut. I can't even keep up, and sometimes it's overkill. But anyway, but he does do Twitter, Instagram, exactly those things that you're talking about. And so if you can like find someone that you can go follow, that is your competitor or in a similar market, you kind of see how they do it in Japan, and then that's what you figure, okay, so I have to do stuff like this. But just know that it's gonna all be in Japanese, mostly, so. Your turn, marketing.
Most of our clients come by personal introduction, but we do advertise in Hawaii. It's called NGN channel, and they only have one Japanese channel in each hotel. I think it covers like 130 hotels in the entire state, and we do 30 seconds commercial 24 times a day. And what it does is you just keep hearing the same thing over and over and over and over, and it's kind of built in their head. And then when they go back to Japan, they remember it, and they will ask. Also, they give you credibility. Say, oh, you're on TV, so you must be a credible company. But it's very reasonable, like $3,000 or something a month. And you know, the production cost might be expensive if you do real professional 30 seconds ad. But I found that is the most effective way to advertise in Hawaii for targeting Japanese tourists.
We do a lot of promotion with our e-blast to our customer list of emails, and we found out early on that you can't just discount all the time. You have to do something else, because you don't want them to think about you being a discounter. So you can do gift with purchase. You can line up a promotion that has to do with something that's going on in Hawaii to make it sound like it's appropriate. But discounting just puts you in a completely different category, so you want to kind of keep away from that. One of the other things I wanted to recommend about Line is that for the people that you're close to here, when you're in Japan, if you download the Line app, and the people you're close to download the Line app, you can talk to them, you can FaceTime, you can text message from Japan, there's no charge.
Yeah.
The other thing that
I was gonna say, you should, if you're gonna go to Japan, just have the Line app ready.
Yep.
Because that's how everybody's gonna be sharing, by Line, and it's just, you know.
Then there's a whole group of people that don't use Line, and Japan has something called a pocket Wi-Fi. And if you line up with a company, you can have them ship it to your hotel the day you get there, and then you ship it back to them with a little packet they give you. Inexpensive, I think it's $20 for when we're there. And as soon as you have that pocket Wi-Fi, everything that you have, like your computer and your phones and everything, they work because you have the pocket Wi-Fi. So that's really important. After we established ourselves in Japan, we just bought one, and it's like $80 a month or whatever, but when you have it in your pocket, wherever you're at, you know, your phone works and so forth for the rest of the people that don't have Line.
How do you feel about video? Is video important in jewelry?
It's not so important in jewelry. It isn't, and I think one of the reasons that discounts don't work so good is that because it's not a staple. I mean, if you had a staple and use it all the time as a discount, oh, that's something. But jewelry, we found out that one of the reasons that we do well is that the Japan society is very into family. And the Hawaiian jewelry, the reason they call it Hawaiian heirloom jewelry is because it's passed down. So if they start out with marriage rings, they'll come back and get a bracelet. and then a pendant, and then earrings and so forth, because they like to see us when they come back. We're selling now to the children of the parents we sold marriage rings to, their marriage rings.
Wow, that's great.
So, but Japan is like that. They're very into family. It's very important, very humbling, actually.
I really believe that our companies here have to do better with video. It goes back to telling the story about the product and telling the story about you, your story, your company's story. It can be done very effectively in a short video, and I don't think it's a tremendous cost to get that done. You know, I see the videos going very far, and then we get to the point where you can do them in Japanese or even subtitle them in Japanese. It's so effective, right, for your marketing campaign. Incredibly, incredibly effective for not that much money. And then you put it on YouTube, it's free. You put it on your website, it's free. I mean, once you make the video, it's like software. You just use it, use it, use it, and use it. Right? It's great. Again, we have to do better at that.
And one other thing about we set up a website. You could maneuver around the website and so forth, because the search engine inside the US websites, English websites, are made for that. If you try and translate to the Japanese market, it just doesn't work. You don't have it. So that's why you'll see the Japan websites are a little different and more simple. I like to think about like when you're driving in Europe, the signs are all simple because everybody speaks a different language. So you try and make your website like that. Easy to maneuver, very simple, very easy to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, because if you go to a Japanese corporate website, in my opinion, man, they're way too busy. You know, they try to get as many Japanese words as they can on the front page, and it's too overwhelming. And if you have a very simple, well thought out website in Japan, you're going to clean up. Do you have any comments?
So from the destination standpoint, we do all of it. But again, you talk about scale, we have a limited budget as well. So my advice would just be, I would go heavy online. That's just the world right now. Print advertising, TV advertising is very, 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 very expensive in Japan. You could blow a lot of money really quick in Japan with these types of advertising. TV and print and even radio, and you'd be surprised how expensive newspaper is too. But definitely online, and all the platforms that Rob talked about earlier, are great. And for us, we do capitalize on YouTube and Instagram and Line and Twitter and all of that. So I would say online is the way to go, and that's just the way the world's going. And surely Asia and Japan. Mobile is our main focus for what we do for the destination.
Do you have a favorite in your organization? I mean, do you start with Instagram and then go there? Or?
Yeah, Instagram for us has been highly successful and great. And the thing I'll add about Instagram is that there's a new term called instagenic. Like photogenic. So make sure when you post stuff on Instagram, it's visually attractive too, because the instagenic phenomenon in Japan right now, we make sure everything that we do is instagenic, and because we get more likes or follows or whatever. But yeah, Instagram has been great for us. YouTube's been great for us as well.
So who actually does it in your organization? Is that you, Eric, banging away, or who?
No, we have people that are far more,
Are they here or in Japan?
Both, here in Japan, so on both sides. So, but a lot from here, because the stuff that we post is very organic from here. So yeah.
That's great.
I think one of the things that we're really talking about that we're not saying outright is that the video and all those kinds of communication aren't, here's my product, it's 20% off, buy. So when you communicate with your customers, you want to show them something about your product and something about Hawaii, because that's what they really like.
Exactly.
So if you show your CEO bungee jumping off the poly, that's probably pretty cool. But if you say it's 30% off right now while supplies last, that's not as cool.
That's a great point.
One last thing I want to add, no one's brought it up. For the e-commerce, we were just about to change over to doing this for our ukuleles. And this came up by my younger managers, who I try to keep up on all this stuff, but 3D for your product. It's not as, the barriers to doing it aren't as much anymore. There's a lot of software out that allow you to do it. So we were just about to finish doing it for our ukuleles. So like different products, they want to see the whole thing. And so being able to look at it in 3D on your site
Spin it around.
Spin it around. And so, whereas before bigger companies were the only guys that could afford it, there's a lot of stuff now that you can afford to do it in the apps that will convert that stuff for you and show it. And there was actually data to that. The companies that actually, all they did was started doing 3D, their sales went up like 20%, 22%, or something like that. So whatever the product is. So it'll kind of stand us out.
Is that important in jewelry?
Oh, very important. Very important. You want to imagine that you can actually put that ring on your finger or whatever, so you need to see it. The more that they can do that. And the thing about interesting enough about Hawaiian jewelry, none of it's the same. Your name, your design, your inscription, your this, your that. So the more that they can put it together, it's like Starbucks. Starbucks is so popular, but you can go there, you can get a half cap, decaf, 170 degrees, with a tweak of soy milk and all that, because that's your way.
Right.
So any part of that you can contribute into your product from Hawaii, that's important.
Great point. Okay, I'm sorry, we're a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to jump through these last summary slides very quickly. What I tried to set up was an idea of what I see in my world as sort of the best practices of companies from Hawaii that are doing well, and this is some of the common denominators for them. Again, I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but it's important for you to start focusing in on the target market segment. Who is that? And then start your marketing messages only to that segment. You have a Japanese website and you have Japanese e-commerce capability on the website. You have Japanese social media accounts and you're monitoring it to see how they're doing. You have a Japanese email address. So for example, if your domain is example.com, you have Japan at example.com. And there's somebody on the other end of that email address who can handle that in Japanese. That's extremely important. You have to have timely responses. There's a belief, probably true in Japan, that when they send an email to Hawaii, it's kind of out there in the vapor for a while before they get a response. And we need to respond very quickly. Japan is extremely timely and punctual society. The companies I see doing really well are sending out Japanese emails, newsletters, at least quarterly, probably monthly is important. How often do you guys do an email blast or quarterly?
Well, we do monthly, but the trick is not to say it's 30% off this and that. But here's a new product.
Yeah, tell them something new.
Here's something about here's me bungee jumping off the poly. There's something like that.
Yeah, in marketing, we call these touches. Anytime that you have an interaction with the customer, it's a touch. And so you want these touches to be soft and gentle, not a hardcore touch, like an elbow in Japan. Just gentle, let them know, we're still here. Tell them what's new. And over time, you can get feedback and you'll understand exactly how to craft those messages so that they don't look at it as spam. They look at it as, oh, hey, this is a message from Phil. Wonder what's going on with Phil. The best companies have detailed databases of their contacts and they're monitoring how often they're in touch with those customers. It's incredibly important to keep working on that. Add to the database and clean up the database and call the database of old addresses that don't work anymore or contacts that are not relevant anymore. They spend a lot of time at trade shows, the companies that know what they're doing. And in fact, I think that's one of their major activities, in fact, is going to trade shows in Japan. And then, again, back to the spare parts and topics like that, but the companies that are doing the best are the ones who've thought through this Maybe they learned over time, but they have to maintain some inventory in Japan. And that's how the customers there get the quickest delivery of the product, by ordering it in Japan. So I give you some examples here of things you could do in phase one towards the best practices. This is, if you're operating, trying to sell to customers that are in Japan, you start a Japan marketing plan and begin to define that target market segment. Put some Japanese verbiage on your website. It doesn't have to be the whole website. Just get some paragraphs in Japanese to start to explain you, your product, and the story. Make 10% of your social media posts in the Japanese language. Just make it flow into your normal English messages. Send one Japanese email newsletter within the next 3 months and learn how to go through and see the click rates and the open rates and stuff that I had alluded to earlier. Start a Japanese database, meaning you get the kanji names, first name and last name of the contacts. You know, don't be, a lot of Americans will see the kanji and they're like, oh boy. Don't. Get into it, learn it. Learn how to differentiate what is a regular first name and what is a regular family name. It's not difficult, but it takes some time. Attend a major trade show in the next several months. And get out, when you go to the trade show, get out, roam around the show, but then roam around Tokyo or Osaka or wherever the trade show is, and see what other products are like. What are the stores like? What does it look like? How much do things cost? What's the packaging look like? Meet with the various shipping companies that I put up here. Talk to them, learn and say, this is what my product looks like, right? If I want to ship one of these to Japan, how much does that cost? What if I ship 10? What if I ship 1,000 or 10,000? What does all that cost? Get to know that and get to find people you can trust, because you're going to work with shipping companies more and more as you send more product to Japan, so it's good to have a relationship with them. Try to figure out how you might have some inventory in Japan, even a small amount of inventory that you could ship from. I think that that's a very worthwhile thing. Look at your website and then say, okay, is it available for me to buy my website .jp? Right? Because in next year you might want to have a Japanese website, so just see what it costs. If you buy it in Japan, it's $99 a year. You can get it from GoDaddy in the US for $24 a year. Very important, trademarks, get that going. If you don't have that under control, get it under control quickly in the next several months at least. And then a reminder that April 17th, we do have a trademark specific seminar here. This is phase one towards best practices. This is if you're selling to tourists that are coming to Hawaii. Again, I'm back to the target market segment. You got to start to crafting your messages, but ignoring the people who are not in that target market segment. Don't try to think, you know, I'm going to sell it to every possible tourist, because you're not. Sell it to the people who you can sing the most in tune with. Get some Japanese verbiage on your website. 10% of your social media is posted in Japanese, and start to learn about Japanese hashtags. To me, that's extremely important for the tourist market. The hashtags seem to be followed much more so by Japanese social media users than US social media users. Get a Japanese email address. Put some Japanese verbiage at your point of sale, meaning if you're at a craft fair, or you have a store, or you wholesale to a store, get them to put some Japanese verbiage that you control. Put a sign there. If you're a restaurant, get menus, laminate the menus. Again, please use a professional translator, but get some Japanese verbiage up there, because it makes the Japanese customers feel so much more comfortable with starting a relationship with you, even for a simple purchase. Start relationships with the people that sell the ads at these magazines around town, right? I think that that's a good thing. You can invest a couple hours doing that over the next few months. And then really look at getting bags for your omiyage presents. I think that's critical. To me, it's very simple, but there's just so many companies here that aren't investing that time or a little bit of cost in getting some nice bags. And don't forget to put your business cards in there too. So very quickly, these are the last few slides, and then we'll open it up for a full-blown Q&A. But I put some more resources of things you could contact here, links, numbers you could call for marketing-ish help. These are resources in Hawaii, of course, the HPEC and DBED, and John Holman's commercial service office, the foreign trade zone here. There's the MHLW has a representative at the consulate, but there's MHLW could be important. For some of your products, you might need testing and what have you for food and cosmetics. The MHLW is important. The Japanese consulate, they're very helpful up there in Nu'uanu. And the Department of Agriculture has some Japanese staff here that are exceptional, and they're very, very helpful people. And I would recommend you contact them, and I can give you their contact information if you need to reach out to them. Here's some resources in DC. This is very good, export.gov, and then I linked to a very specific Japan market overview that they have, which is very helpful. These are resources in Japan. If you are on the ground there, you could reach out to the embassies and the main consulate in Osaka. JETRO, we talked about, they also have a big office in Los Angeles. Not much here in Hawaii. Here's MHLW again, which could be very helpful. Here's customs, so you could figure out what are the duties, inbound duties you might be responsible for, some trade statistics, and then, of course, the American Chamber of Commerce in Japan, which we talked about earlier. These are the remaining seminars for the rest of the year. E-commerce, specifically e-commerce for exporters, March 8th. Scaling up operations in case you are blessed with a large order from one of these international customers and you need to figure out, oh boy, how do I build all of this stuff and get it ready for shipment? That's a great presentation done by Innovate Hawaii. Then we have that IP trademarks seminar on April 17th. International trade shows on May 10th, and then exporter services like engineering, architecture, and the like. That'll be June 14th. That's our last episode. So thank you for that. Now, let's have a full-blown Q&A for the panel, and then neighbor islands, please feel free. I would ask, if you're asking a question, please speak loudly so hopefully the microphones can pick it up for the online audience. Brian?
Hey Rob, on this year you showed a couple logos made in Hawaii, maybe Aloha. Where did those come from? Are those available for us? Or?
Yeah, that's all pretty much run through the Department of Agriculture. These, yeah, so they certify, especially the Made in Hawaii with Aloha. This one, you have to prove that your product is 51% or more Hawaii. But it's kind of, negotiable is not the right word, but it's flexible because it's not clear, for example, let's say if you had to get something sewn in some other place than Hawaii, but you're designing the fabrics and things like that, that could still very much count as a made in Hawaii product. Right? But I can point you to the people who can work that out for you.
I will say that this one was, they're trying to limit that only for food stuff, the seal.
So other than food is the made in Hawaii?
Yep.
Hi.
Hi. For a beginner going to a expo or a trade show in Japan, what is like the amount of product that would be substantial to take to the trade show?
First you have to find out, is that the kind of trade show where you can actually sell things, or is it just for display only, right? So if you can sell things, then obviously you want to take as much as you think you can sell. But if it's just for display,
Not more than you can in this
Yeah,
market.
yeah, not more than you can really display, but I would also suggest that it's very worthwhile going to a trade show and not even displaying anything, just walking around the first time, right? And figure out, oh, there seems to be a lot of traffic by that door or near the restrooms or near the coffee shop. So when I actually do pay for a booth, I'd really like one to be over there. Or this is, this is a complimentary section of the type of stuff I sell, so I'd like to be in that section, right?
What is the cost of going to a trade show just to observe?
Well, most of the trade shows are free to get in, so the cost would be your airfare and hotel and food while you're there and subways and that kind of thing. I estimate if you were just going to Japan for 5 days and look around at Tokyo and go to some shops and stuff, it's probably $2,000.
There are probably 10 or 12 trade shows in Japan that you go to and you pay for the booth, anywhere from 600 to 2,000, and they basically don't really start till April and they wind up in August. And some of them are huge. They're the Yokohama shows and the Tokyo shows, and I'm surprised there isn't really any list of where you can find all these shows. They're by different promoters, and they all basically have the same format. They will have a big stage, and they'll have one hula group after another coming in because there's so many hula groups in Japan. And then they will have 20 to 60 booths, and then you put your wares out at the booth. People come around and they'll give you cash or whatever for them. It's a great way to meet people. But I think what needs to be put together is a list of the promoters and the shows. There's April, May, June, July, and August, huge shows. And then usually at the end of the year, there's shows. And these are shows that are totally retail, and that the promoters would be excited for you to go to because you're from Hawaii. Because there's a lot of products in Japan at these shows that are not made in Hawaii at all. And the people that go to the shows really want the Hawaii products.
What is your product or service? Do you mind telling us?
I'm helping a nonprofit in Waianae, and it's called Made on the Waianae Coast. So I'm gathering a lot of small business people and trying to market their products. So
That's
that
great.
we can change the economy in Waianae. So we're right now just kicking it off and meeting the vendors and trying to see what our inventory is and how we can do e-commerce internationally from Waianae.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on starting.
Most of these shows will give you a couple chairs and a couple tables and a designated place to set up everything, so pretty easy to work with.
Just a quick question for those of you that started selling to Japanese tourists originally here, what was the tipping point to then determine to go ahead and start selling in Japan for you?
When I started selling, I got put in a position at the Royal Hawaiian Shopping Center. I started a little kiosk and I had nowhere to go. Life put me there, and I was selling Hawaiian jewelry, which I knew how to make. I spent all my money on advertising to North America, and all my customers were Japanese. So when I realized that, I started marketing in Japan. And even though there's a lot of magazines you can advertise in, there's 3 or 4 no-brainers that come out every year. I think Maple was one of them and a couple others. And they're the ones that people look at when they're coming to Japan.
From Japan to Hawaii.
From Japan to Hawaii. And then what happened in our case is that we actually had to interact with the people in Japan that hadn't come here because they needed to have things done to the product that we made. And that's what caused us to go there, and then we got into shows, and we got to Soho, and it just all worked. But it didn't happen overnight. It was, there wasn't anybody to actually talk to tell you that this is what works and that doesn't work. But there is no better customer that I know of in the world than the Japanese people. They are polite, they are brand conscious, they will spend the money, and and they're not really, they don't really ask you for discounts all the time. The Koreans will wait till you get mad, then they know they got the best price. And the Chinese, that's so different that I don't want to talk about it. But the Japanese, they're looking, for some reason, the Japanese people want to associate themselves with quality around the world. And so they're excited to travel and bring things back. So when you go to Japan, you'll see that. You go to a pizza place, you think, oh, great, now I'm at a pizza place, and the first thing on the menu is squid pizza. And you're going, squid pizza? Well, that's because the Japanese figured out how to make the pizza the way that they want it, but in a pizza way. So they're just great consumers, just great. And the thing that I like personally, because we do a lot more retail and wholesale, is I love the people. And you see them again and again and again. So it isn't just numbers. You're actually seeing people that have a story to tell, and oh, you're great to see them again and all that. When you're communicating, they love that. That's what we're talking about, not just saying it's a certain amount off, but as you're talking to one another, to somebody else in a foreign country, they just love that. So.
More on that, so do you have a store here, or just product? Is your product already being sold here?
Yes, we sell these cell phone cases at Ala Moana. And we've been noticing this is really popular with Japanese, the honu turtles. And so it's not our primary thing we do, but we just started seeing it kind of taken off, and I want to expand that. And so it's engaged me to be more interested in the Japanese consumers, because primarily most of our customers are local because of the services we offer. But I've been noticing an uptick in Japanese interest in these particular designs and these cases. And so just want to see where it goes.
Are they wood?
Yes. And they're designed, this is a gentleman from Kahuku who designed the cases. He's an artist.
So I'll talk to you more about this particular thing later. I've been marketing these in Japan for the last 3 years, so.
But are they from Kahuku?
These are probably from, no, these are from the guy who, so I'm a wood manufacturer. So I actually sell the coal wood ones.
I wanted to talk to you about
So that's the difference between the chicken or the free-range chicken or the grain-fed free chicken.
Exactly. It's all about that. But as far as that goes, like, I guess to answer the question, to try to be applicable to everybody, more about, like, if you have the product already being sold here, and the market is anytime for Japan. I mean, that's kind of the point. If you're nowhere to be bought, then there's no sense going there to go and try and market. So everyone's going to be at different stages in their businesses, whether you're out of your house and trying to just do e-commerce, or you're only, and even if you're at the farmers markets. I mean, that's a legitimate, like, even those guys should be marketing to Japan already, if they're not. I mean, they get so many tourists already going there. But to give an example on the other side, I actually have a shop in Maui that this particular place gets no Japanese customers. So I'm not even considering marketing that particular brand or shop to Japan, because it really wouldn't do anything, because there's just so few visitors that it wouldn't be worthwhile. Whereas someone like you in Ala Moana, yeah, it makes great sense to do that, because they're already there shopping.
Great. Well, you need to get some verbiage, some Japanese
Yeah, I have
verbiage
like
at your kiosk.
zero Japanese, and it's just kind of pointing and so.
No, get that verbiage and your business will grow. I guarantee you 25%.
Yeah, because I've been tracking the sales and I'm noticing I'm actually sold out of these right now, which is killing me. I have other designs, but this is the number one design.
Your verbiage has to say, demand's so high we can't keep it in stock. So get it runs like a rocket and easy on the pocket.
On the Japanese language that you were emphasizing, we had a funny experience in our shop in Kailua. We have a Japanese speaker in the shop, and she found that when she spoke in Japanese to the tourists, that they often did buy stuff. Whereas when I spoke in my broken Japanese, just saying, it's a chocolate shop, and I said, oh, do you like dark chocolate or milk chocolate? They would more often buy from me than from the Japanese speaker. Do you have any clues
because it's you. It goes back to what we were talking about. You're the story of they get it. You're the whole background of the operation, right? So they feel like, wow, rather than just the sales girl, sort of.
But I'm not conveying that in Japanese.
No, but I mean, just your whole presence there, that you're trying to communicate in Japanese to them, and it makes it feel very authentic that I'm buying this from the maker, right? To me, it makes perfect sense. If you weren't there, then of course the sales girl would be able to finish the sale, but I think having you there, you're like the chocolate sensei, right? I mean, you've forgotten more about chocolate than most people ever know, right? They're standing next to the man, so of course they think that's great.
Well, that's a part of omiyage.
Sure.
Yeah. He becomes the story.
Yeah, you should try to make sure they take a selfie with you and take it back to the.
Well, and have you noticed all the cream kiosks from Israel who they hire? I don't know if any of you guys are in there right now, but it's part of this story. And so you just need to hire another white guy that speaks broken Japanese, and it doesn't have to be you. And it'll
with a name tag with your name on it.
Actually, at that point, it wouldn't matter. You're just the story. You're the white guy that they met in Hawaii, and they got the chance that they got to walk back and go, oh, it was funny listening to them try to speak to us, but yet they want to have an English interaction while they're here, actually. I found a lot of Japanese get turned off when I speak fluently to them. They will answer me back in English because they want to show they can, or they want the English experience more than the communication. So.
And how can we translate that experience to when we go to Japan? Should I try to do the same?
Speak your broken Japanese? Yeah, it'll be fine. You'll be perfect. Fit right in. But then have a flyer that's in Japanese that tells all the details.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, which we also do. So, I mean, that's the takeaway. They'll have a fun time and experience interacting with you, which they'll want to do. In fact, you'll have to limit your time and say, I got this other customer to do, because you guys that'll want to hang out and talk about Hawaii and how much they love Hawaii for 2 hours at your booth. So how to say that politely?
One of the questions that just came in on the webinar is, can you repeat the names of the magazines and publications that Japanese consumers read before coming to Hawaii? So the two big ones are a magazine, let me see if I can go back quickly. It's a magazine called Hawaii, but it's Hawaii in katakana, so if you, and then another one called Hawaii-ist. It looks like Hawaii, oh, I cruised right past it. It looks like Hawaii Street, but it's really Hawaii, Hawaii-ist. Where are you? And then there's many, many other magazines that will do special Hawaii issues that don't normally have anything to do with Hawaii necessarily. It should be right here somewhere. These are the local magazines, and then these here are Hawaii. What you're seeing would be on your far left in the pink lettering, that's Hawaii and katakana and Hawaiiist. And then Brutus was just a magazine I found that had done it's a men's magazine, had done a Hawaii issue. Any other questions? Please.
There's another magazine called Hanako, which is for young women, and they put out Hawaii specials. And when I lived in Japan, I recall 2 times when they put out a Hawaii issue of Hanako, and I remember those 2 times because I got a call from my friends that says, "What's kairua?" And the other call was...
So you're responsible for sending all the tourists.
The other call was, "What's eggs and things?" And that was like 10 or 15 years ago. So if you get into that magazine, it goes viral.
For sure.
It's their Bible to go to and then return to Japan.
That's a really good point. Once you're in those books and you become a staple, it's just
a license to print money, basically. Okay. And please.
Can I tell something about the Japanese trade show?
Please.
If Mr. Rika doesn't mind. Okay. We have a Hawaiian business to export something, and we attended for the trade show in Japan. Over 10 years experience, and recently only 3 biggest Hawaiian trade show in May, Odaiba Hawaiian Festival.
Yeah.
That is a very, very huge, not huge Hawaiian Festival, but people attending is very huge. And the second one is Aloha Yokohama, formerly Aloha Yokohama, but currently the Aloha Tokyo. It's a location change from Yokohama to Tokyo.
Where in Tokyo?
Since this year. And
Nihonbashi.
July or August.
Ebisu?
Yeah, Ebisu, yes. Ebisu. So, feel regard getting that right. And the third one is opening in August or September. And Umeda Hankyu. It's in Osaka.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes, that's a big one. And that 3 one is that 3 very biggest in Japan. So I know that people has a limited budget, right? So and if you want to eliminate trade show in Japan, that 3 is the best for you. Yes.
How do you spell the last one?
Hankyu, Hankyu. It's a big, relatively upscale department store based in Osaka, Kyoto region, and they have a Hawaii festival. It's in July, and DBEC can help you a lot with that.
Well, you have to, if you want to be part of that, you need to be selected. So you need to get in touch with Hankyu. So anyone interested, just.
I'm sorry, a little my promotion. Why I said about it? So my wife is in charge of the Umeda Hankyu, gathering the vendor from Hawaii.
Oh, there's your contact.
So I'm sorry that my business is a little gray. So gray means, it's a very, you got said already. So I don't want to say something. After that, so I want to go to the first restroom. After that, call me. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, thank you very much for your comment. Any more questions, anybody? Okay, please join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists. I really appreciate their time and effort sharing their experiences and their expertise, and I hope you learned something about marketing in Japan. We'll be able to hang out for a little while after if you'd like to ask questions, but please, we look forward to seeing you at some of our upcoming seminars. Thank you.